Call me old man Wade.
Damn you, old man!
Wait.
Old ass man.
Shut up, old man. You smell like fart.
No!
Old man.
He's so old, he got a podcast on cassette.
Fuck, you're old.
Damn it, Wade.
Dog, how the hell is the Whiskey Brothers age limit young? I figured they'd be around like my 40-year-old ass or something like that.
So not the Whiskey Brothers demo. It's very interesting. We've found that all of our individual demographics are different than our group demographic, if that makes any sense. So for me, a lot of how I work publicly is I'm not really that dirty. It's personally I am. I'm me. But when in my stage show and everything else, I just don't automatically go there. I'm more interested in having intelligent conversations that are funny, and then you throw in some cruise ship gigs, and my nieces are now turning into teenagers, and just this weird. And then the nature of the internet in general. I don't know how anyone finds anybody, but the things I write and the videos I produce and the photographs I take and a lot of non-comedic stuff tends to find an audience that's a little more diverse than just the Whiskey Brothers, which is in fact 35 to 50-year-old drunk dudes. So
As I literally sit here with my
oh, are you drinking? I feel
yeah. You know what's funny? What's funny
I don't really drink anymore unless I'm on the podcast. Yet this is a podcast, so let's
cheers it up.
Well, there's so many choices. I've got a whole liquor cabinet, but it's between Jameson or I'm doing this double oak rye that Old Humble produces down here, and it's really, really, really good.
Every time you guys talk about it, I'm like, yo, I gotta get out to Colorado. I have to.
The Stranahans guys, those are the Colorado folks. They're good people too. We have Old Humble's down here in Houston. They're a big supporter of the show, and I stumble into all these good whiskey making people, and it makes my life happy and everything's wonderful.
All right, for those of you who don't know, who haven't heard the show, ladies and gentlemen, the host of the Whiskey Brothers, the one who's been on every episode, literally, and I am counting that one episode where you told him to fuck off, because technically you were on the episode. Slade Ham.
It's good to be here, man. Thanks. It's been a while. We haven't talked in a while. It's good to hear your voice and see you in person.
Yeah, like shit like
Sludge.
Cheers to peace.
Indeed, the world needs more of that.
For real. You know what's funny? Funny conversation I had with my wife years ago when we were she was picking me up from work as she was leaving, and there was this ridiculous traffic going on, and it was all because rubbernecking. And she said the simplest and most profound thing I've ever heard, like 10 years ago. She goes, this world would be a lot better if everybody minded their fucking business.
But here's the thing, is that we can't, and we live in a society that pushes us. We American culture specifically, but Western culture in general is a comparative culture. We don't experience things the way people who process the world in terms of groupthink do, right? If you go into some of the tribal regions of Africa or New Guinea or some of these other places where the culture is communal, we don't have that. We only have a comparative society. I know what I look like, not in relation to you or how we interact, but compared to you and what we both have or do not have.
Yeah.
So rubbernecking is just society's way of making sure that motherfucker's a little more dead than I am. That's all. That's all.
But it's so funny, and you say that because you are a literal world traveler. You've been to over 100 countries.
No, like over 50 something.
Really?
Something. Yeah.
Why do you think you've been over? Why do you think you've been over 100?
I wish I had. There's only 202 to 12 depending on 198 to 212 depending on who you're asking at the time, and I try to box it off by who has an Olympic delegation, but then that includes places like Guam and Puerto Rico. So it gets really sloppy at some point. I like to say I've been to 6 continents and maybe a quarter of the world, so it's like 50 something countries.
Yeah. Speaking and the reason I bring it up is specifically because you talk about like the places you've been and the differences in cultures, and like some people will say, Greg Giraldo had a joke that it cracks me the fuck every time. He goes, "America's the greatest country in the world." He goes, "How do you know there's not a country out there where everyone gets blowjobs for a nickel and the other person out there is out there giving out nickels?"
Yup.
And it's so true. It's like, and I remember I've been to Hawaii twice. I'm blessed enough to have been there twice. Some people don't even go once. The second time I went, me and my wife, we did the touristy road to Hana thing, but we took a car, and we spent $5 on this app, and they start with the whole "this trip will change your life" and blah 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 blah, and we're both like, yeah, what the fuck ever. But it really did though. Like seeing how all like the natural greenery and just like so many damn waterfalls in such a relatively short span of time, and then just going like to all these other random places, just even around the country, like it's different. Like I love how people will always say that the South is the most racist place in the world, and I'll laugh. I go, "You ever been to Boston?" It's like I live this shit. Like it's like I'm a big black guy in Boston. Everyone goes, "Well, you have nothing to worry about." I was like, "You say that, but
enough of anything is dangerous."
Yeah, but I bring it up because you actually are speaking from a place of knowledge, as opposed to some people speak in a place of ignorance, because they actually don't know their anything other than their town, their city, or boroughs. You always talk about getting out of Beaumont and never looking back, but even some people in your city probably haven't even left that part of town.
Oh, I know plenty of them. Plenty of them. I think it's. I don't know if anything I'm going to say in the next however long we talk will make any sense to anyone or not. I know these are things I've discovered that make sense to me, and if you happen to be parallel to me in your journey or whatever it is you're up to, maybe some of this shit will make sense too. Yeah. But I spent my first 30 years in Southeast Texas. So my first 8 or 9 in a little city called Orange that no one's ever heard of, just on the Louisiana-Texas border on I-10. And then 25 miles west of that was Beaumont, which is where I spent, years, grades 3 through whenever I got out at the age of 30. I started traveling in my 20s, and that's where the poke started. Like, wait a second. And I went to Europe. It was 2001. So I would have been, God, I don't want to do age me math. I was in my 20s, in early 20s. So we were going to, it was October of 2001, so right after 9/11 had happened. And I was really far down on the list of comics to go perform for the military, to make a long story short. Everyone in front of me canceled. They were like, I'm not going overseas, 9/11, 9/11. And I was young and brash and 20-something, and I'd never been anywhere outside of maybe a 4-state radius around the Gulf Coast. I'd been to Florida and I think St. Louis once by plane my senior year of high school. I'd been nowhere. And Germany shook something loose in me. I was just this wide-eyed, ignorant Texas child who had, in my head, all I wanted, I was going over there, and these were weird foreign people, and I was perfect Texas kid. And I remember the comic I was with, and he's a great dude now, and he's much more evolved too, but we were both young and dumb, and we would just I remember making fun of the accent, and, we were just being stupid, childish, the way you are when you don't understand something. And big and loud and all the things that I would never be now when I go into a strange place. I want to be the opposite. I want to be quiet and taking it in and trying to absorb. I mean, there's so much magic to entering a room differently than I used to. So that's the thing that kind of shook it for me. And then I would go back to the little bar I'd hang out in Texas, and I'd sit there with these people who had never been anywhere. They'd only been one less place than me, but I was coming back from Germany, and I was suddenly all these people on the news that we're in Afghanistan and bombs and terror and all this stuff. I had faces that went along with these guys. Hey, really great show tonight. I've got to fly a relief mission into Afghanistan in the morning. Nice to meet you. And they're the load masters on these planes. And suddenly the stories stop being, to your 20-something-year-old soft head, the thing that the news is cramming into you. Because if you remember, the early 2000s, the late 90s was when entertainment news was really coming into its own anyway. So the Gulf War was the first thing we had that was really, that in my mind, I'm sure had I been here during Vietnam or anything else, the sensationalism would have been there as well. It just would have been slower, right? It's just a newspaper or the radio at night. But for us, we were like the first generation in this Gulf War where it was different than even the first Gulf War. They figured the first Gulf War, they figured out, oh, we can monetize all this. And by the time we got to shock and awe, they couldn't wait to put stuff like that on the TV.
Yeah.
Shock, awe, bomb, explosion.
all the key words and phrases that are gonna excite people.
Yes, and this was, if you take the advent of Fox News around that time and sort, and not to point the finger to either side because they're both complicit, but to me in Southeast Texas, they were more receptive to that conservative message. So that's what I would see duplicated a lot. You'd sit at the bar and you'd hear these people pair, what we need to do is turn the Middle East into a glass goddamn parking lot. And you go, but I was just kind of there, and not there, but more there than this. And it was enough, it's enough to shake you into an investigatory mode. Like
yes.
you go, okay, I thought everything I knew was right, like out of the box. I thought I just, like everybody does until you're challenged, I thought I'd just been handed the gift horse out of the chute. Yeah, what I got is right. What you guys think is wrong, and my whole job on this planet is to figure out how you're wrong and correct you. Yeah. Like that's a lot of. So we just get there easily, and that's kind of where I was. And it was just every subsequent trip from there was like a little more eye opening until now. I'm more comfortable in other places many times than I am here. So you bring up something that actually leads to one of the things that I definitely wanted to talk about. You were just discussing about changes. It's like I'm not a religious person by any means, but one of the things in the Bible I always loved was when I was a child I spoke like a child. When I was an adult I spoke like an adult. And like people evolve. Like that's just the way it is. If you're the same person you were, like I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. Like you know what I mean? When I was so I was born in the early 80s. And so from then up until about my little brother was born, there was nothing but homophobia in my mind, just from like the stuff my father would say, the stuff that people I played basketball with. My little brother was born early 90s. When he was about 6, I was like, oh shit, he's gay. Like I knew like immediately, and then that triggered something in my head, and all the really fucked up things that I was saying was based out of like ignorance and stupidity. And again, like and people always use the word ignorance wrong when it's literally I was ignorant. I didn't know anything about the culture. I was lucky enough to hang around a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community who was like, yo, come to the gay pride parade with us. You don't have to march with us, but just come hang out. So I sat in the car. Next year I marched and I dressed up in all green. I was the Hulk. Little kid called me Shrek. I was like, fuck it, I'm Shrek. You know what I mean? I roll with it. But like, you know what I mean? But it was one of the best experiences of my life, just dancing and running around and just being a part of it. Now, this is an experience I wouldn't have gotten had I been closed-minded and didn't evolve into the person that I continue to try to be. And I bring that up to the Whiskey Brothers because you guys are on episode 997? It will be 999. We tape on Monday, and then we follow that up. We're doing 1000 live Wednesday, March 2nd.
Which we definitely want to get into because I think that's going to be super dope. But the stuff you guys talked about in episodes 1 through 10 are far from stuff that you guys have talked about since the Dale Cheeseman and Kiki Maroon days. And it's funny it's some of it's an age thing, some of it's an evolution thing, and some of it is just pieces moving into different parts of their lives. Because for a while I was like, nothing's beating the Rob Mungo, Slade Ham, Kiki Maroon, Dale Cheeseman. I was like, y'all aren't beating that.
And you've been on board since when did you come on board?
So for me, I came on. I actually remember it was pole position.
Okay, who was the cast?
It was it was you, Rob, John Westling, and Voldemort.
Oh,
So I popped on because I was listening to Titus's podcast, and Sam happened to be on. And
okay, I know exactly when you found this.
so then I popped on that, and I was like, "Oh, this is fucking great!" So, and you guys became background music for video game stuff. And then I was like, "Oh, I got Apple Music. I can jump and listen to the stand up." And so that's how I became. So like listening to it, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things I'm like, I am super uncomfortable listening to this shit right now. But it was also kind of funny because there were times I'd be listening to some of y'all and you'd be like, I don't know if we should be putting this out or not.
But you mentioned that in terms of evolution, and that's really what it is. So I'm a believer. I'm a notorious note taker in my life. I've journaled since I was in high school. I've captured. If you asked me down to the month, I could tell you what I was doing. And this goes all the way back to the 90s. If I just wanted to look it up, I have records of my life that way. It's very bizarre, but it's how I use it for a couple of reasons. I journal for the sake of it allows me to track my own sort of patterns, because a lot of times we truncate time. You know what I mean? Like, it's, to me, stuff that happened just recently. The truth is, it happened way back in the past. It's 10 years ago or 15 years ago in my head was only 5 years ago, but it wasn't. It was 15 years ago in my head. It was, 6 years ago happened like in the last year. It's just all this crazy timey-wimey. It went 80s, 90s, COVID. Like, I don't even know what happened. So I journal for those reasons, so that I can't lie to myself, so that I can't look back and go, oh man, you've only been doing this for the last year. When the truth is, I got to stare it down because I'm really going back every morning before I write and looking at 1 year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. And when I do that, there's no lying to yourself. You don't get to go, oh yeah, that's a thing you used to do 15 years ago. You're like, bro, that's a thing you used to do 15 years ago, and 10 years ago, and 5 years ago, and last year, and last month, and yesterday, and you're doing it again today, bro.
I have a simple philosophy, and it's a tagline for the podcast. It's like, I'm happy on my hypocrisy.
yes, and you should be, and that's what. So all the journaling thing for me is what I've always captured my life, and the podcast, in a way, the same way I can look back at the evolution of my own ideas and beliefs and how I know the worldview I've managed to cobble together now will be different than it was 20 years ago when I was so far the other end of the political spectrum, or coming out of that Southeast Texas worldview, or any of the things and 20 years before that, I wanted to be a T-Rex when I grew up. So like, we can't be beholden to those previous versions of ourselves. And I also don't have it in me to explain to every person the evolutionary process of how I went from here to here. So that's why when these people go back and start grabbing your old stuff, and it hasn't even happened to me, I just see it happen to so many other people, and they're like, well, you said that, and I'm like, you can't find the guy who said that. He's dead. He was killed by the guy who's here defending himself. That's what we do. We're constantly assassinating these older versions of ourselves, and every time you hold up to the light all my failures and force me to defend them, which I can't do, or force me to acknowledge them again, which I can do, but it then becomes this uncomfortable. I have to reintroduce the denial process of me having beaten this thing and moved on, right?
The dragon's dead. No reason to give it a fucking potion and bring it back to kill it fucking again. You've already...
Yeah, it's how I feel sometimes, and I know there's people who will disagree with me vehemently, but it's how I feel about the formal process of Alcoholics Anonymous and some of these other things, where it's me looking at that upcoming chip or this birthday, and if I fail, I'm starting all over, and it suddenly carries this huge impact versus, they say and I forget who said this, there is some philosopher much smarter than me, but that the things we focus on become real, and that's Jung or Nietzsche or some version of all of them. It says some version of that, all the way back to Plato and Socrates, or somebody else with a Greek name. But that is what you focus on. To deny a thing, you have to acknowledge it in the first place. It's why it's why grudges don't work. It's why all of this letting go shit is real, because if I gotta wake up every day and say, you're not my enemy, bro, you're my enemy. You know, if I wake up every day and we just coexist or bump into each other how we do and go about our business, that's different. You're not part of what I'm focusing on. Yeah. But that always naming your faults and your shortcomings and your past, you got to own everything you did. Yeah, maybe, but what if I'm past it? Like, what if I just own it with the people or the person or the situation who might have been the victim, instead of this big public lynching that you think needs to occur, where I got to now shoulder all of my past mistakes? Like, I'm doing my best to walk up the hill with today's problems. So, could you stop putting rocks in my bag, maybe?
You know, it's funny, like, I'm talking to my therapist, and one of the first things we talked about, because I'm a former cutter. Like, I've cut, I've former suicide, like, the whole nine. And so, for me, when I was talking to him about it, he goes, when was the last time you did? And I was like, I don't know. He goes, well, if you do, don't be ashamed of it. He goes, relapsing isn't necessarily a bad thing. Acknowledging it and trying to move on is the purpose of all that. And so, it's funny, since then, the urges have gone. Like, you know what I mean? I'm loving life a little bit more. And then, like, this whole shit with COVID, like, really fucked my depression up. But, but as you say, like, it's
sort of if you think about it in terms of the children who are least likely to become drug addicts or alcoholics, I think down the line, or wants to have problems or get DWIs and all those things, probably weren't the kids whose parents were like, if you want a drink, have a drink. It was probably the one where every time we make something taboo, it becomes more and more the thing to do, right? So for me, if you just even and that's not because those tricks work on children, it's because of how we're wired. And I play those games with myself all the time. I would do it for a while. There was a stretch at the beginning of the pandemic where it's when I was quitting a lot of drinking, and I was going out. I mean, you got to understand I joke about it on stage now because I'm trying to work through some of it, like for myself. But I look back at how much I was going out and partying, and when I first moved back to Houston, and I was, dealing with a lot of grief and a lot of just my own shit. But I was 6 nights a week. I was bouncing around with Sam and the guys and Rob, and we'd hit one of 3 different bars where we never had a tab. Are you kidding me? Do you know how much you can drink if you don't have to eat? I mean, $20 in a tip jar at each bar and you're done. I was driving home. Like, I don't even know the house. My car was like a horse. I would smack it on the ass and end up in the yard in the morning. Like, that was my plan. There wasn't even Uber. Yeah. And it was obnoxious. And you look at all of that and you think of it's hard to tell these stories, to even talk about it, because it requires exactly what we're talking about, right? Like this weird ownership of having done really terrible things. I never hit anyone. I never got in a wreck. I never got a DWI. I look at the math, and I look at the amount of time, the amount of mileage I drove versus the amount of cops per mileage, if you wanted to do a quick math equation on the back of a napkin in a bar that I'm probably leaving drunk. You know what I mean? Yeah. I dodged more bullets than I should have. And at the beginning of this whole pandemic, I was like, man, I'm just going to stop. I can't go out. I don't really enjoy drinking by myself. It's very much a social crutch. So let's just see. And what I learned, because I tried to prep up for the first week or two of the, we didn't know how long we were going to be anywhere. This is going to be 2 weeks, whatever. So I learned that 7 days worth of food and 7 days worth of pot is exactly 4 days worth of both. It goes very quickly. I had the most uncontrollable, rightfully so, munchies that you'd ever seen, and I succumbed to them. I completely caved and gave in. I went, well, The world's ended. I could be dead tomorrow, and if I'm not dead, everyone I know could be dead, and who cares anyway? And I don't know when I'm going to see another person. And after a couple of weeks, I had just gone through a full-blown... All I was seeing were the Whiskey Brothers when we were doing episodes. I was seeing no one else at the beginning of all of this. I shaved my head out of sheer curiosity and boredom. And then I was eating like no one's ever eaten in their life. Because I would go to the grocery store and buy everything because I didn't want to go back. And I would come home with angel food cake, like a bunt cake. And I would cut it up Rob Mungle style and put butter on it and put it in the toaster oven. Yes, and I would eat half the cake while I watched the Great British Bake Off, and I would just blow up to 100. It didn't matter. I just like, you know what I'm gonna be today? Fat. That's what I'm gonna be. And every day that was my. And it got to a point where you just have to go, okay, let's, if for no other reason than sheer curiosity, let's figure this out. Like, why is it that I can't control these urges? Why is it that I'm a grown-ass man who has resisted a myriad of urges over his time on this planet. I've never been addicted to any of this, I've got a strong willpower and mindset. So why am I eating entire butt cakes after I've eaten an entire thing of Totino's pizza rolls, after I've eaten a steak? You know what why? And you get into the weird sciencey parts of it all about how THC tricks your brain into believing it's starving and all these other things like that. Or you can just sit there with the emotion and go, what is this? What am I feeling? And why is it happening? And what is going on? And we don't do that as people at all. We're such reactionary little monsters to everything that comes along. And it's a rare instance that we get to sit there and do that. And I had to do that with that particular circumstance.
You know what? And so I didn't know dry January was a thing, but between the pandemic, so I started my new job in 2020. And because I work at a hospital and I work security at a hospital, I move around. I was moving around a lot. I dropped 20 pounds just moving around, just getting active, and like, you know what I mean? I felt great. Yeah. Then March hit. and I was eating and drink. Eating wasn't so bad, but I was drinking with impunity. I'm not a heavy whiskey guy. Whiskey I enjoy now. I don't drink it to get drunk. I drink it because I enjoy it now. So I would have whiskey for like months, but these fucking 6.5 percent alcohol by volume IPAs were fucking me up. And now I have a demon in my family. My grandfather, God rest his soul, died from alcoholism. I haven't spoken to my mother in 4 years because she's a drunk who disrespected me, my wife, my marriage, and I was like, not doing it. And the way it doesn't matter. So last November to December, I put on 14 pounds of nothing but beer weight. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop in January. And so that month, I didn't drink. Then the first week of February went, I was like, I think I'm good. Friend came over, got drunk. The next day, I was like, why the fuck do I do this? And I realized that a lot of it was drinking with friends was okay. But then I found myself drinking by myself, and I couldn't figure out why. And what you said was a realization I came to yesterday. I didn't like being alone with my own thoughts. I hated it. I did all my writing that needed to be done for the next few days. I was like, fuck, I have nothing to do. All right, I'll play Horizon for the next 12 hours because I have nothing to do. But I'm like, God, I really want to drink. And it was just because I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts. Now, they weren't necessarily bad thoughts. And you know what it's like being a creative person. You're like, fuck, I want to do this, and I want to do that. I want to do this, and I want to write this. So, like, my mind's all over the place. And it's funny because, like, when I'm recording, I drink because it's social. But when I record by myself, I don't really drink. Because it's just me and myself and what it is, and I'm doing something. When I'm writing, I don't drink. But if I'm sitting home by myself, I was like, I enjoy the idea of drinking and watching something, or drinking and playing a video game. But now acknowledging that the reason I'm doing it is because I don't like being alone with my own thoughts is now a step further into figuring out why I'm doing it in general. So that month of January not drinking was really eye-opening. and then thinking about, damn, how much did I drink over the vacation? And I wasn't. And again, I don't drive because people are fucking insane, and I'm not driving. I'm not putting behind the wheel with my fucking anger. So, but just the idea of like just I didn't have to worry about that. I could just get drunk. And at one point, I lived a 2-hour walk from a bar that I worked across the street from. So I would see the bartenders. They're like, "You coming by after work?" Absolutely. And again, $80 worth of alcohol, $40 tip, 2-hour drunk walk home. Perfectly fine. Then I started working at a bar, and then we would drink until 5 a.m. And then but again, like drinking's fun, but it's finding out the reason why I drink kind of took away like the umph into it. You know what I mean?
That's what's important though. Is you're getting close to something that's going to be groundbreaking for you because you're starting to poke at the wall, and it's you're peeling away the plaster, and you'll get through it at some point. And what's difficult about that is the only way through all of that is eventually you do have to sit with yourself and those thoughts. There's no way around it. There's no dealing with it. But this comes back to what we were talking about earlier, and it's you don't have to. I've done an enormous amount of self-work over the last couple of years, and I say that not to use the word self-work like in some pop culture kind of way. I just mean work on myself, and I know how to talk to me and counsel me and work through things. And I've done a lot of it because I haven't been around people. So like we were speaking about earlier, even when it came to things like munchies or whatever else, there were instances where I was like, all right, well, no more. You're just not allowed to eat after 8 o'clock or whatever this rule was I would establish for myself. And that was phase one of the experiment where everything failed miserably. I can't speak for anyone else, but I do horribly with ultimatums. If you tell me I can't do anything at 8 by 8 o'clock, I got to stop. By 8:05, I've gone by I've said fuck you in every language, and by 8:07, the toaster oven's back on, and there's more cake inside.
My wife calls me the most stubborn person in the world, and literally like because of like stuff like that, and she'll go, Mark, you can't do that. I'm like, why the fuck not? And then like I'm sitting there doing it, and she goes, you don't even like this. Why are you doing it? Because you told me I could.
Right, and then if you look at that from the standpoint of we do this with ourselves all the time. It's fascinating when it's you and your wife having that conversation. It's more fascinating when it's you and yourself having that conversation.
Yeah.
And we don't acknowledge it, but we do have that mental dialogue, that inner argument that you're constantly having with yourself. Well, I'm not going to get up and eat anything. Obviously, I'm not going to get up and eat anything. It's after 8 o'clock. I'm just going to lay here. I'm going to watch TV. I'm going to fall asleep. The other part of you is like, bro, you're a grown-ass man. You want that food. You live in this house by yourself. If you want to get up and eat that food, why don't you just go eat that food, man? And I don't want to get up and eat that food. That's what's got me at 190 pounds, and I've never been this, for me, that's a lot. So I'm going to lay here, and I'm just not going, man, you bitch ass. Like, that's the conversation that goes on every night, and one of me would win as long as I had a hard line in the sand.
Yeah.
And it was as long as you give yourself, and this transcends anything from self-work to trying to learn a skill or changing jobs or whatever else, but that permission to drop the ball and not bat 1,000 or whatever mixed sports metaphor you want to use, it's really pretty great where you're like, all right, man, if I break tonight, that's cool. Tomorrow, it adds to the guilt I will feel, and that helps me in my rationalization process because I know me. Yeah. And I know if I hold the line tonight, then maybe tomorrow I'm allowed to cross it again. And it's almost you playing boss and employee and knowing how your own dumb brain works and figuring out the reward process and how we move, towards pleasure or away from pain or whichever motivator we react to, learning what those triggers are and then tricking ourselves. It's amazing how you can partition your own hard drive to run its own operating. So it's very weird, but it works.
So, and it's funny we moved from actually talking about. So why the change? So okay, so just from a fan standpoint.
Oh yeah. So yes.
So just from a fan standpoint, when you guys said Rob was done, it was like watching, like, knowing that, like, this is the last episode of a series you enjoy.
Uh-huh.
And I took a week to, like, I just wasn't going to listen to it. But I was like, okay, fuck it. I love Jerry. Whenever Jerry Wayne popped on the show, I'd laugh my ass off. And I was like, okay, Rob, I was like Jerry Wayne and Trey. I was like, all right, and Slade, I was like, this should be good. But again, I'm losing Rob Mongo. Love Rob Mongo.
Well, so what you're seeing though is, to lace it together a little bit. The way I look back at that journal process and this lifelong capturing and looking at patterns process, I also now have, since February of 2011, so 11 plus years of an audio journal. I've been communing with my friends twice a week. Imagine if you had an hour of your life captured on audio for the last 11 years. And I'm able to trace back. It's horrendous in places to hear things that I thought or arguments I would have that I now would be on the other side of. And with that comes, there's no way we were all going to make it. 11 years is, I shouldn't be here. This is, for all intents and purposes, this should be the Saved by the Bell of the next generation, and I shouldn't be anywhere near this. But I am. And I'm the only through line aside from Sam, who still is here to 20, whatever percentage of the time. But through every single incarnation, what you've really kind of been seeing is just an extension of the person I'm kind of being along the way. And all right, cool, I'm this person. We have an empty seat. Who do we want to maneuver in that's going to allow me to explore the stuff I'm into? Because I'm the only real constant at the moment. Yeah. And because of that, that's where you're seeing these weird little evolutions. And now as we tick towards episode 1000, the show is a little more conscious and conversational and honest and authentic than maybe it was in the past, which is different, but I think more mature and still funny. And I don't know if we're capable of being the same 20-something-year-old cut-ups or however old we were when we started.
You know what? But it's... I don't want to say the show is better because it's almost insulting to say something's better, but...
Well, yeah, as a fan, tell me what this... You've seen every incarnation.
So, you know what it is? You talk about evolution. And I remember the last time...
Because we never get to talk to you guys like this.
So, and I remember this clear as day. It was the last episode we did, and I was like, yeah, was Trey for real? And I remember saying to you that I was like, in order to be a good comedian and in order to be a good cast member on your show, you have to be smart. Mm-hmm. And Trey, and I'm listening to Trey, and I'm like, dude, you sound like me trying to fit in. And it was bothersome because it's like, I'm listening to him like, dude, you are so much fucking smarter than this.
Well, but mark mark that thought. Trey was, when I met Trey was the me that went to Germany in 2001.
And it's funny.
Trey has evolved, and I've watched him because I just took him to Europe in October of 2021, exactly 20 years after I went to Germany for the first time. And I got to watch. The reason Trey is as good as he is, and the reason Trey will be more successful than any of us, Trey Tutson is open to anything you want to show him. He comes in with a lot of uh-uhs, but those things crumble at the first objection. And that's really what makes it magic, is that's how we all really should be. We all know shit. Trey's different from most people in that most people, if you show them something that conflicts with their belief, they'll just go, you must have read the wrong internet, And Trey goes, oh shit, man, I'm going to have to change what I say. But yeah, that's the difference.
And it's funny because even listening to him in his in all his jokes, I'm like, he's so fucking smart. And he always, when you're good at something and when you love something, you study. And I listen to him talk now. And I listen to him talk about comedy and how much he studies it. Like when he joined the show, he went back and listened to 600 fucking episodes of this shit to see what he was getting into. And I admire anybody who's... I hate you. I don't like using this word, but I hate people who get into a profession and then don't know the people who came before them. And I look at Trey and I'm like, he's a student of the game. Like he's
a scholar.
Yeah, and
he's a scholar. So much so that when I edited Jerry, so I've been doing a lot of production work on the not on the side, but just like as an exploration and shit. I need to know how to do, and I want to understand better. So I produced Jerry Wayne's special, and when we were in the editing bay, I called Trey because Trey has seen every comedy special that's ever come out in the history of ever. Damn. So he has an encyclopedic memory of, oh yeah, that was just a 3-camera shoot. They cut to the audience, but it wasn't much. Versus, oh, this was like 5 cameras because Bo Burnham directed it, and they used that camera on the back of the stage, and it was a lot of audience shots, but that's how Tambourine. So we talk about that like technically, and he was so instrumental in that we're. I don't know if we've even said this on the podcast. We may have, and I'll show you. You can edit it out. I don't know if I can do a share screen on here or not. But
I'm not recording any video, so it's all audio.
Okay, but can I? But then we'll pause. I want to show you if I can do a share screen, or can you go to a YouTube link?
Yeah, hold on. Let me hit pause on this. So, I just spent about 5 minutes watching the. Can I say what I just watched?
Yeah. So I'm directing Andy Huggins' comedy special, and Andy Huggins is an old outlaw comic. He's one of my pedigree. He's where comedy comes from, and he's been doing it for almost 45 years. He does not have a comedy special, so I am producing, directing this summer. We're about to do the Kickstarter campaign, and you just put, I think, the 3rd set of eyeballs. Andy Huggins hasn't seen that yet.
Oh, nice.
To be perfectly honest. So me, you, and one of the guys who's probably doing color correction on it, and Trey. And
it was, and you know the funny thing, in hearing the people talk about him and hearing the stuff that he says he used to do when he was drinking, like it's all funny and it's all like, oh my god, like this is, he has, like every time I've heard him, it's fucking hilarious, and it's
well, you know, Mark, it comes to this. It's so funny. I had no idea that I was going to show you that we were going to talk about this. But the way this laces together with what we were talking about earlier, because Huggins is a guy who, a big believer in the Alcoholics Anonymous program, and he's a lifelong alcoholic. He quit drinking, I think it's been 25 plus years ago now. He's an incredible example to, and not sponsor for, but asset for a lot of local Houston comics who have recently taken the abstinence plunge when it comes to alcohol. But Andy does own that part of his psyche or his previous life every single day. He talks about it on stage. It is a big part of, and it's ideologically as a director and producer, it's one of the things I struggled with, because personally I'm like, well, you got to let go of who you are back in the day and you got to focus on who you are now. My job is to show them Andy Huggins right now. And then the other part of me is like, wait a second, Andy Huggins is this 45-year body of work. A huge part of it is tied to, in some way or another, alcohol or alcoholism. Even if it's his previous life, a lot of what he talks about on stage now is the better version of him versus that older version of him. So it's really disingenuous on my part to just, we're not going to even talk about that. So that's why, as we're sitting there, you'll hear some of these old stories. There's a fantastic one that comes up that T-Shawn tells about Andy being, hammered in the bar and ruining the night for somebody else who's trying to take a girl home. And it's just textbook drunk behavior. But it's really funny, and Andy and I have kind of talked about how he's not tied to any of that now, and it certainly doesn't have any power over him, but also he is kind of, that's part of his identity. You can't walk around it. So it's interesting to have to deal with those stories and then watch a sober Andy do a stand-up set at the age of 72. It's really cool.
It's fucking great. It is. But again,
it's reinvention. That's what we're doing. That's what the whole thing is. The podcast, the stand-up, it's all being a better version today than you were yesterday.
So why the reinvention? So, because the show, it literally did when Rob left, the very next episode, it was completely different from everything previous to that. There were no breaks. The hard hour then turned into the hard half hour thing left. Yep. There was and more importantly, and again speaking as a fan, the thing that I loved, and the joke from anybody who's listened to the Whiskey Brothers 4, the talk about the craft. It's kind of cool for me because I don't want to be a stand-up comedian. I would be fucking atrocious at it. I just know that. But listening to creative people talk about how they work is dope. Listening to Jerry Wayne talk about his non-binary kid and like accepting the person he was before to who he is now is hilarious. But then he'll flip around and talk about how ducks have corkscrew dicks. Trey,
we didn't lose everything.
So yeah, but then it's funny. It's like, so then Trey will talk about threesomes, his ex-wife, his parents, but then we'll flip it around and literally have me. I was listening to the show and I remember you telling me to contact Trey and tell him this personally. He had tears rolling down my face talking about what it's like to be black in a certain situation. I'm like, oh my God, I understand everything he's coming from. And so it's like, it's this perfect balance of, like you said, comedy and conversation. And I know now there's this whole like thing with people where it's like, comedy doesn't have to be funny, and
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. First and foremost, it's not. It's an unfair statement to say comedy doesn't have to be funny. To be comedy, it must be funny. Otherwise, they're just words. They're not. Comedy is a very specific, and I am the wordiest motherfucker that's ever walked the planet. But I am the first person to tell you that if it doesn't have a punchline, it's not stand-up comedy. I would tell you this about some of the late Bill Hicks work, and I am the biggest fan by nature and by proxy. But some of that latter stuff, same with Carlin.
I was just gonna say, I remember because
Carlin more than Hicks, but Hicks was I would most of what people love that is Bill Hicks isn't his comedy. We're all in love with Bill Hicks, the philosopher. We're all in love with that it's all just a ride. We're all in love with that Bill Hicks. It's formative in some of my own philosophy, but his comedy is way better. And Huggins is the one who's reminded me of this before. And as I've been sitting, driving cross state with Andy in the car, and you have that weird generational moment where you just kind of look over and you go, Hicks has been, the same 3 feet away having the same philosophical conversation. And, I never met Bill like a lot of these guys, but I've always been just one step next to. And, for me, it's great mental fodder, but you gotta have the punchline. So yes, comedy has to be funny first. Everything else, truthful and all that other shit.
I mean, it's in the root word.
Well, yeah, look, Trey and I were talking. So there's, I believe, formulaically, and this gets into the craft of it all again. And this is part of why we did make that shift, right? It's some of the rules that were in place were to protect us from ourselves. I think when you first start a podcast, and we went off the rails fast because it was the Wild West. You can imagine 2011 on the internet. It was insane. So and we were right.
Let me just say this. I'm going to say this for people who don't don't really
might have been born in 2011,
or just the people who don't get the concept of that. Fergie was in the halftime show.
I could send you a photograph from that night of me and her. It's in my. It's literally that night. It was in Houston, wasn't it? Was that the?
I don't remember, but I remember going back and listening.
No. You know what? She was here. When
you were here?
Hey Google, when was the Super Bowl played in Houston? 2017. Okay, never mind.
But I remember.
We played it because that's we did one of the first or second episodes was about that.
It's sad that I actually.
God, you guys are better historians than I am.
No, this is how sad it is, and because like I said, I go back and I listen to like the old like episodes. So again, if I'm playing NBA 2K, I don't want to hear the fucking announcers. So like I was going back and listening, and this is how sad I know this. You said you went to a bar, you saw Scarface, and he was like, "I want you to meet somebody," and that's how you met Fergie.
Oh yeah, you do know that story. Brad's a dear friend of mine. He's if and when you speak to him again, tell him that Old Man Wade said, "There's no way in hell that he's not one of the top 3 most influential and best rappers alive." Period. Of course he is. And that's not my bias, and I've had to set it aside when he put out this album a couple of years ago, and he does our intro music, and that album, if you haven't listened to,
I've heard it.
Is Deeply Rooted, I think is the name of the record.
That's exactly what it's called.
It's one of the most. I forgot halfway through that it was a friend of mine, and it was me listening to hip hop in the 90s again, or the late 80s. He's a fantastic artist, but more than anything, why it's easy to forget that he's the artist is because my relationship with him is purely French. We are clowns at the end of a bar. Talking to one another. We met when I first moved to Houston. I was bartending at this little spot that he references in a song about going to Davenport. And Davenport is a bar in Houston, and I'd have to Google the lyric to tell you what song it was. But that bar was a little tiny martini bar down on 59 here in Houston, and nobody really went there. And when I first moved to Houston, I was doing part-time radio on my buddy Outlaw Dave's show, and one of the sponsors was the guy who owned this bar, Davenport. And I would pick up Tuesday. I go, "Hey, I'm in town. I used to bartend. I'm kind of broke. It's 2009. I don't really, I'm happy to pick up some extra money because the road's not really lucrative at the moment." And I started picking up Tuesday nights there. And he would just come in because it was dead, and that was his hangout. And he liked hanging out there because nobody was in there. And casually over the course of nights, I'd serve him drinks. He'd talk shit. I'd talk shit. We realized we were both kind of, snappy motherfuckers in that regard. And then a couple of nights I'd pop in this is back in those drinking days where, all right, well, I'm about to hit 3 different bars. I'd go in and he'd be hanging out. So now we're hanging out on the other side of the bar. And then we started talking music, which is a deep, passion in terms of consumption. And he was really into a bunch of old rock and roll and stuff that I was kind of like, wait a second. So we started trading off songs. We'd both there was nobody in the bar, so we'd spin back and forth, my iPod versus his iPod. And I'd introduce him to stuff, he'd introduce me to stuff. And we just became friends by same dudes in the same place, and to this day, he's in my top 3 real friends. So when we're sitting at Davenport that night, and we had both popped in because the Super Bowl was being played here in Houston, and we were trying to both get in and have a drink before it got crowded because there were no TVs in Davenport, so it was a cool place to hang while people are watching a game. It was just us and a couple of people in there. Then the game ends. Sorry, man. I was like, I'm gonna bounce. And before I could get out of the way, he said, no. I got a friend swinging by. And
that's fucking cool.
He dumped Fergie on me for about half an hour. I don't know another way to put it.
But that's fucking cool though, man. Like it
was a good night.
So we talked about the change, but why though? What was the conversation that you guys had with each other to be like?
The conversation happened I'm trying to think of a good example, because have you ever been in a scenario where everyone just stopped or changed direction or attitude without a word being spoken? And I know that's an odd
it's honestly, it's
perhaps an altercation or something where everybody just suddenly, like an unspoken wave came over the room, and when it passed, everybody's frequency was the same.
Yes.
So I say that not in a bad way, because that sounds like a correction, but it's not, because Rob and I this was a Rob Mungle. The Whiskey Brothers is Rob Mungle and Bill Miller from 1998. You can't change the DNA you start with. there's always going to be whiskey at the table. There's always going to be really harsh truths. There's always going to be punchlines, making sure that those harsh truths are swallowable, right? Rob and I had a total vision, and Johnny was part of that, and Sam was part of that. But as Sam and Johnny have come and gone, Johnny gone for good, you saw Kiki and Dale and Ed and Owen and all these people that just picked up the mic. Ashton Womack, he's writing for the fucking Daily Show now. Like, these are people who came in and swung bats for stretches. Like, I talk about Ed Blake, Big Ed Blake, and somebody the other day was like, oh, so-and-so was better for it. And I was like, it's not even about the enormous amount of time I spent in a room with him. If we did 100 episodes, that's like 200 or 300 hours of time. And I don't know if you total up like your friendships or how much time you spend with those people, but say you go to dinner with them 3 times a year, that's only about 9 hours of time. So when I say I spent 200 or 300 hours over the course of a period of time with somebody, like, it's crazy. So you get in these concentrated stretches of, well, this is how we're vibing. I got a guitar, I got a bass drum, and I got a bass guitar, and I got vocals. That's what we can play right now. Well, if Kiki replaces that bass drum with a snare, and all of a sudden the guitar gets replaced with a didgeridoo for a stretch because that's what Dale's huffing, then, well, that's what we play now. And I don't have a choice but to play Aboriginal electric rock for this stretch because that's what we have in the room.
Yeah.
So when Rob walked out of the room, like, literal lead vocalist or it's like Night Ranger losing, I think of a good example. It's literally like Van Halen having to rebrand after losing Sammy Hagar and or then David Lee Roth. You're suddenly like, all right, look, I know what the guitar is, I know what lead is, and I know what the name of the band is, but I also have to make it either sound like the band it was or do what we did when we added Sammy Hagar and go, hey, fucking David Lee Roth was great, but we're no longer jumping off the stage and kicking our legs anymore. We're going to sing Where Eagles Fly for a minute and see if that doesn't sell. Because I'm still going to move these fingers fast as shit. And that's kind of the best analogy I have. And if Rob Mungle hears this and doesn't appreciate a Van Halen analogy and an explanation for how the Whiskey Brothers work, then he can suck it.
I was actually going to say you guys went from Soundgarden to Audio Slave.
That's another. There you go. That's the one I wish I'd come up with. It's a better version. Or even Tom Morello's solo projects or what he's doing now. Or the only thing I can tell you for sure is that if you strum the strings on episode 1 and you listen to them at episode 1000, it is the same. There is an underlying tone that has not changed, and it is still a bunch of guys who enjoy being in a room unfettered, writing jokes with one another.
You know what's funny? You say that. I just want to make sure to plug the show because this is something you guys talked about on episode 996 when you guys were talking about the Greeks and how certain things were playing and how music at a certain pitch, like the sound sounds different. It's exactly what you guys were talking about last week.
Yes. We are. These are simply octaves of comedy, I think, and that is really the best way to explain it. I don't think we've ever. What I can say for certain is that the cast on this show has been authentic to itself at the moment the entire time, and that changes. But we have been very, very truthful with ourselves and with the audience from the point of view we had at the time. I think the entire time, and that's the magic to the Whiskey Brothers.
And I think that authenticity is something I think all your fans appreciate. Because again, back to episode 1, Sharita, she's still there. Almost 1,000
Absolutely.
episodes.
She'll be in the room for episode 1,000.
And it's funny that I don't have to work overnight, so I actually can sit and watch you guys do episode 1,000 because, which is funny, your back's fucked up. I just had back surgery 2 weeks ago, And I'm like, oh, well, workman's comp. like, I literally can't do anything. I'm sitting on my ass playing fucking the first Horizon and in NBA 2K. But speaking of it, episode 1000. There are perks that go into listening, live streaming, subscribing, which is important. Subscribing to the Whiskey Brothers YouTube page. Tell everybody where they can find it, just because I don't want to get the information wrong.
So I probably will too. Go to YouTube and type in the Whiskey Brothers. That will take you directly to us. And as I say, it's the Whiskey Brothers. Let me make sure it's not just Whiskey Brothers. If I had control of this from day one, I do think I would have made sure that we picked a name that didn't have a direct art. Like, it wouldn't have had a "the" in it. I would have just made sure there was no confusion.
Well, the good thing is, so I'm on YouTube. If you type in the Whiskey Brothers podcast,
does it take you to a jug band in Tennessee?
Thankfully, no. The first thing that pops up is the Whiskey Brothers 279 videos, and it's got the logos with the shot glass on it.
That's us. So we're giving away $1,000 live. We have blessed fans and sponsors who have given. We have a stack of cash. I've literally got a stack of cash to throw at strangers. And if you are subscribed to the podcast and hear when we do it, which will be Wednesday night, it's going to happen at 7:30 on March 4th Central Time. So if you're on our YouTube page, we're giving away. We're making this up. So you don't have to it's not a random draw. People are like, I don't want to know. Is this going to be fair? It's not going to be. It's not all going to be fair. Some is going to be fair. It's the fucking
Whiskey Brothers show. It's the fucking old Wild West. No, it's not going to be fair.
So some is going to be me looking at the screen and going, "You look really cool. Here's $100." And that's what hey, you just subscribed. Here's $100.
Yeah.
Hey, you're the grand prize winner. Here's $500. It's the very least we can do, and we know how to throw a party. It's going to be whiskey and guests and lots of talk and $1,000. I mean, if I can't entice you with $1,000, I don't know what else to do. I mean, we're really funny on top of that, but $1,000.
It's $1,000. It's going to be fucking fun. Like, I'm sure there'll be some musical guest at some point in time. Someone will do something, and even if there isn't, just for the fucking comedy alone, it's absolutely worth it. Like, if I lived close to Houston, I would stalkily creep you with a magnifying glass from the
we try to be kind to those people who have been around for a while, and it's if you were here, would slip you in. Musically, you never know. There is a chance. Scarface has an invitation. There's a chance he'll pop by. Marzi Montezari used to play guitar for Exporter in Heaviest, Texas. He may stop by and shred. It's just a great chef. We may have some chefs. We just do a house full of coolness,
and that's really what it is.
We're gonna give it. We're in $1,000.
And it's
$1,000. And guess who's coming?
Who's coming?
Mongol's gonna be there.
Yeah, I'm there. I am absolutely
putting Mongol back. Mongol said he's coming. Now, if he no shows, but he says he's coming.
You know what? Every so often I think about my anger issues, but he is just the fucking king of that shit. It's amazing nobody has punched him in the face yet. But I also think that Mongol is smart enough to know, one, to pick his spots. Two, he has reached a point of level of not giving a fuckness that I think that it's, and I'm going to show my dorkiness, he's like Unis the Untouchable. It's like he has this barrier of like people see as like
yeah, I will never be that free, man.
It's you say that, but honestly, like conversation you said on the podcast and conversation you said on my show is like the list of people who don't like you, and you're like, I don't care.
I don't, and it's funny that even since the last time we talked, this comes back to what we were talking about earlier. I haven't even thought about a list of people who don't like me, or because before, I guarantee you, when we were talking, and it's been plus 2 years.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Because it was right around your book came out, until All the Dragons Are Dead.
Yes, that was. I know when that was, and I know the me that did that podcast, and I can tell you that then I was very aware of a list of people I was no longer enemies with, even though they still didn't like me. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Sound familiar? And I named them every night before bed, like Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? I'm not mad at this person and this person and this person, and I've forgiven this person and this person and this person. It was a list of these jackasses, like by name, bro. So
I wish I could Photoshop your face laying in bed like Arya Stark. Arya Stark just naming like Larry the Cable Guy.
No, he's great. But the handful of those people. But now, as you bring that up, it's beautiful to me that it snapped to my mind that I'm having to do an active pull to go in and think of who those people would be and the reasons and the whats. And that's like that evolutionary sort of thing where I'm just like, oh, I didn't draw a line in the sand anymore. Go, I am not mad at this, and this. I just walked past it. And if you ask me about it, like right now, I can talk about it. You know why? Because I don't have a hard line in the sand. And tomorrow morning when I wake up, this will just be another thing I don't think about until I think about it again. But not having that hard edge, and oh my God, if we ever go back there, we're reinventing the trauma and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, no, man, just don't. Why you gotta be so definitive?
My therapist said one of the first questions he asked me he goes, what's the opposite of love? And I go, hate. He goes, no, it's indifference.
Apathy.
It's indifference.
Yeah.
He was just like
indifference, apathy. Yep.
He was just like, when you just don't care about something, he goes, when you hate, he goes, hate and love are closely intertwined. He was like, when you just don't care about something and they just don't even affect you, like, he goes, that's the opposite of love.
You cannot hate something you do not love. It's impossible. It's impossible.
God damn, that's deep.
You cannot do it. They are so unbelievably intertwined. And that is, so your therapist, if it helps, that's right. I think in terms of how I see the world, the minute you stop thinking, processing, making something part of this constant spiral,
yeah,
that's where you're letting go of all of that attachment bullshit, whatever that psychological fluff is. It's very real. We are what we constantly think of. We are what we give names to. We are what we give power to. Much less give a fucking anniversary to, or
what the fuck
anything
was it?
else. That you might as well hang its poster on your wall.
It was an issue of Wolverine where he killed Sabretooth, and the whole thing was, you are what I will become. And you know what I mean? His whole thing was stopping from becoming that one thing. And it was funny because, and you're a comic book guy, and you're a fan of comic books.
Yeah, this is a comic book podcast. Maybe somewhere in here we'll split. I'm like doing.
Whoa. So let me tell you, the comic book podcast that one's something completely different. This is my fun show. This is the
but you're a comic book guy.
Oh, you have
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's your conversations.
And we're gonna get into I have a really fun game, and right after we get into the Guardians of the Galaxy Avengers thing, I have a really fun game for you.
All right, I got you.
So, but just the idea of and also you're a Game of Thrones guy. All the best characters evolve. They're not the same person. Like when it's like they're the antithesis of what they are. Everyone uses Batman and the Joker. They're closer knit than everyone makes them out to be. When I think of the antithesis of two things, I think of Wolverine and Sabretooth. It's like their powers are the same, but they are literally opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to who they are, who they want to be. Like right now, Sabretooth is the king of Krakoa Hell, which I think is something he was born to do. It's like he's like, if you think of a mutant who should be running hell, it's not Sinister, it's fucking Sabretooth. And so that's how cool that shit is. So like when you talk about things that aren't the same, it's like
well, there are from a writing perspective, which I know some things about. Every good character has an arc. If even a sub character, even a B character, if you go to your favorite TV show and look at a season, there is in a writer's room there will be a whiteboard, and in that whiteboard will have columns of episodes and columns of characters, and every one of them is a moving chess piece that has to make an arc over the course of a season in some direction or another. But if they end where they began, they're not really characters, because everything is evolution, and we as consumers require that pattern to be fulfilled.
Yes.
This character, if it does this, we're very bored. Because we're predictive. If I know what you're going to do and you do it, I check out. If your character's on an arc that I'm trying to get ahead of and can't, that's when you're writing good TV. Even when it's not great TV like Ozark, it's still the survivability of those character arcs that keeps you in it. The constant tension that keeps you in it. And it's not those are unrealistic human beings doing very dumb things that you wouldn't buy in a million years. But they, like gears, interlock so perfectly that it appeases your dumb lizard or monkey, whichever one likes patterns in the background. Yeah. So that's get all sidetracked on that.
We'll save that. We'll save that for another fucking episode, because I have so many. I just finished Game of Thrones. I just started and finished Game of Thrones last year, and when the Dragon Queen went crazy, I said, "Why were you guys shocked? We saw this shit happen in episode in like season 2."
You saw what you saw on TV though happened. Like the arc did this, and like parabolic, like straight up, not parabolic, but straight up, versus what should be a gradual thing, and they just TV pacing is different than book pacing.
Oh right? God, yes.
So your first 3 seasons of Game of Thrones happened according to the books. Each season was a book, and then when you got to the end of the books, season 4 into season 5-ish, it took over TV pacing, where Martin just said, "Hey, here's what I'm planning to do," and TV writers started writing it. And TV writers don't look at things from the same zoomed out spectrum. They don't look at this as I have 1,000 pages to write this. They go, I got 50 pages an episode. That's what I got, and most of that's dialogue. So what do? We cram it in a different way. And that's why your breaker trips when a character evolves that fast. You go, that's where it was going, but not like that. I'm not mad she got there. I'm mad how she got there.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why...
Because she spent so goddamn long not getting there.
Yes. So, and this is why I'm so fucking worried about the X-Men becoming part of the MCU, because the X-Men are not made for fucking movies. They're made for TV. The X-Men should be either a cartoon or it should be a Disney Plus show.
Why do you say that?
There's way too much going on person to person for it to work. Let's take the first X-Men movie. They rushed so much that like there were characters in there that were developed and there was characters that weren't developed. Halle Berry sucked in that. Let's just get that out the way. But she was kind of just there. Like, you know what I mean? But for some reason, Toad had more memorable moments than Storm.
Yes.
That doesn't make any sense. But so
you have in these first. I know I asked you what your reason was, but it makes me want to tell you my reason, and it's gonna tie into what you're gonna want to talk about in a second. And it's anytime you're dealing with an entity like the X-Men. You cannot shine a flashlight on everyone in that film.
Absolutely.
It's just not doable. It's very, very difficult to make Wolverine a focal point, and Cyclops a focal point, and Professor X a focal point, and all these other characters' focal points along the way when our ability to process people and stuff and relationships is limited. Okay. So it's what you had, it's what you got into with a lot of other, it's what I think has gone wrong with so many DC films. It's what I think Guardians of the Galaxy got right. You gave me 5 people acting like one person, but Guardians of the Galaxy is like watching Inside Out. In terms
Holy
of...
fuck, that's a good analogy.
They're not, it's not everybody. This is why Eternals was so shitty to me. I don't need any overlapping character traits. I need you guys to operate as nodes in a network. And that's what makes group work. It's if you look at Guardians, Gamora was very much the rational part of it all, making sure that nobody jumped off the cliff. Chris Pratt is clearly playing the renegade. We should always go 10 miles faster than we should. Groot wants to blow shit up. He's Demolitions. But Drax is giving you this weird... He should be the Demolitions guy, and he's giving you this weird Zen-like sense of comedy to it.
Yeah.
And when you put all that in the gumbo, it tickles all the right taste buds. There's never a part of... I don't know if you played the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, see, that's the one I wanted. See, that's what I wanted to talk about. The difference between the game and the difference between those two games. Guardians of the Galaxy is a fucking triumph to not just video games, but storytelling in general. And as soon as
what are you doing? You're playing one person. You're just controlling one character with all these little nodes in a network. Whereas Avengers, I got 37 different. What does this shit do? I didn't even know she was a person before this game. Now I gotta learn what 7th grade rubber gecko hands do to a window.
So I'm like, I like Kamala Khan. I like Miss Marvel. I didn't buy this game for her to be the lead character. Now, when I found out that you could
I liked it.
Huh?
I did. She was my favorite part of the game.
Oh, no. She was your favorite part of the game. But I didn't buy the game for that. Now,
of course not. Of course not. You played the game to be a fucking Avenger. You know what? You played the game for the same reason I played the game. To be an Avenger.
Yes.
That was it.
I pick Thor. I leave him in that stupid costume where his name tag says Blake on it. And I just throw my hammer at shit. And I love it. I heard about Guardians of the Galaxy. You can only use Star-Lord. I said, fuck that. I want to use Rocket. I want to use a giant fucking gun. And I want to do it. Buddy of mine was like, hey, it's on sale on PlayStation. I bought it. I bought the extra one for extra $20. I was like, all right, I'll give this game a shot. And I fell in love. I played the game 4 times in the first I beat the game 4 times in a month because I couldn't get over how well this game was done. And then I thought to myself, now imagine this, but you're only using Captain America. Or you're only using Thor. Or you're only using Iron Man. But you still get to direct these other characters around. Like, at no point in time was I annoyed by Guardians of the Galaxy.
No, not only were you not annoyed, we play video games because they appease parts of our brain. All they are is somebody did a breakdown on it. I think it was Mark Robert on one of his. I don't know if you're familiar with Mark Robert.
I've heard the name, but I don't know him.
Rober, maybe is how you pronounce it. He's a former NASA engineer. He worked on the Mars rover, but he has a YouTube channel that does a lot of everyday physics. He's often been on Jimmy Kimmel. He's a very, very, very talented scientist, but he's a really good communicator. And at one point, he had a TED Talk. In his TED Talk, if you go look up Mark Rober's TED Talk, R-O-B-E-R, he goes, if I gave you a list of instructions and told you to perform them in order at this, accurately, how long before you gave up? And the list of instructions is like, press this button at a certain time, pull this lever at a certain time, rotate this, all these weird little things, do this 2 times in a row. He gives it to you in this order, and he goes, how long before you just said this is the dumbest thing I've ever done? And then he rotates the whole image and overlays a Nintendo controller, and it turns into Super Mario Brothers, and you realize that playing Super Mario Brothers is just a matter of pressing the right button for X amount of time and then pressing this button combination, and it's just pressing a pattern of buttons, but in a way that keeps you engaged.
Yeah. I was talking about that.
Over and over, right?
Yeah.
So video games appeal to that part of our brain. And a lot of games, when you play them, they allow you to level up in a visible way. Mm-hmm. That character arc we were talking about earlier, that's not just movies and TV shows. It's everything. As you're progressing in a game, your character should get stronger in accordance to the physics of the world. They should be able to do things later on that they couldn't do earlier. And the problem I have with Avengers is just that I don't know how long I played it or where I even am in the game, but I'm pretty sure everybody I've got does the same shit they did when I got them.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't feel, I don't feel like I've accomplished anything. I just feel like I'm in different places that look the same, fighting people that look the same, that are, nothing about it moves me, versus Guardians, I begin at the beginning, and by the time I get to the end, all of my characters have new moves and options, depending on which way I press this. I got 4 choices, and those things really matter. Like, they impact the scenario we're in.
Before I make this statement, did you finish the game?
Oh, God, yes.
You fought fucking Fin Fang Foom!
Listen, that is Chase Russo and I trade games with one another. He's my dear friend. He's a wonderful comic. He used to tour with Joe Coy. He's now up in New York doing a bunch of all things comedy shows. He's stand-up. He's a beautiful, beautiful comic. But he's also a gamer, and he'll call me 2 or 3 times a week. And when Guardians came out, we both bought it on the same day. He got it on his way home from buying his PS5, cocksucker. I still don't have mine. I'm on a 4, like a chump. I know. I'm on the lottery. I was shooting sketches for the Whiskey Brothers on Thursday when the lottery came up.
I hope they appreciate your sacrifice, because there is no reason I should have one.
But I'm gonna get one, and I'm not bitter about it. It will come when it comes. It's the most zen thing I can say. So I got this, and he got that, and we played side by side, racing towards the end, and we made different decisions, and his ending was a little bit different than mine. But Fin Fang Foom has been teased to me in so many instances on screen of some sort, from Times Square billboards to whatever else, that I was so happy to just kick his ass.
Didn't it feel great?
Good. Oh, so good.
So
that's the best. The writing on that game is better than the gameplay, and that is a strong statement.
Someone said to me before I bought the game, the selling point to me was, he goes, it's like watching a movie.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, and I watched it, like, this is fucking amazing. And so one of my favorite moments of the game is where you jump and you grab your Walkman, and it's like this whole 80s theme, and I paused it and laughed hysterically. My wife was like, what happened? And I unpaused it, and she laughed too. And she goes, that was so, and Gamora just puts her, and again, to your point, character development and knowing your personality, it was simply subtle.
And your writers understanding the character.
Yes.
Like the Drax is written. I would say better, because I'm a gun fan. I am a Peacemaker to Guardians.
That show had no business being a 10. That show had no business being being perfect at all.
It's so remarkable how my only, you're talking about Peacemaker.
Yes.
9.9, and I'm gonna tell you why. 9.8. I might even drop it to a 9.5.
I'm listening.
And I am as big of a James Gunn fan as you can get. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But every character in there, because every episode, or most of them, are written by him, they all have the same base sense of humor. And it is the only thing that takes me out of it is that there are only a handful of formulas to jokes, okay? There's only a certain handful of types you could really get to from, I'm going to get into the math of comedy, but comedy archetypes are there is no Hannibal Buress in that show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody's a little sarcastically sharp.
Yes.
And not everyone can be. And I mean everyone. From Hardcore to Peacemaker to Vigilante to the black dude with the butterfly in his name.
I love that guy.
To what's her name's daughter. Every character in there, including the villain, shared the exact same level of sarcastic jab.
I will disagree, because the only thing I will say is the dude who was who had the butterfly in him. And he may have been the only person who had a different kind. It was still sarcastic, but it seemed drier. It seemed it worked.
Degrees of the same, again, octaves of the same note.
Yeah.
Or whatever neither one of us knows music, so I can't really. I don't even know that we've been singing the right thing the whole time. But yeah, it's like a doorbell, but louder or softer. Like
Yeah, and it's so. You know what? That's it. It's softer. That's all it was. It was just softer.
It's the same sarcastic, and that's me. If I'm picking that apart, and I'm saying this as somebody who only writes one type of comedy for himself, I get it. If I wrote Peacemaker, it would sound a lot like me, except just different colors or shapes or people. But that's nitpicky in that I know you can do it differently, and I'm frustrated by the people who can do that differently because there are people like Josh Whedon, and that definitely shouldn't be the case. I'm 9 side roads away from the freeway. Bring us back to home.
So, before I get into my next thing, it disappoints me how much of a dickhead he is. I
know.
He wrote one of my favorite X-Men runs ever, and he's just such a fucking dickhead.
Yep.
All right. So I have a game. It's called "You Can Get With This" or "You Can Get With That." So, considering you are what Tim Meadows would call a ladies' man.
He's talking about 2 years ago. Me too. No, this will be fun.
So we're playing. So basically, what we're doing is I picked 2 women. They're either or, but there's a list of them. So some of them are fictional, some of them are real.
Okay.
Now, the options are you can only have sex with one of these women.
All right.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 9. I didn't do an even 10. So we have 9. You can get with this or this, get with that. Are you ready?
Uh-huh.
So mind you, when I start this is them in their prime. All right. Christina Applegate or Sarah Chalk?
Sarah Chalk 100%. And Sarah Chalk from Roseanne Sarah Chalk. That's the.
You didn't even go Scrubs.
So Scrubs, but hear me out. Scrubs is the one that I would obviously want to be with now, right?
Yeah.
Like, can we still together? But Sarah Chalk, Roseanne era was the one that I had a crush on because I think she and I are like the same age. So when I found that show, she was just like celebrity hot girl for me. Does that make sense?
It does.
I can tell you who else was in that school. If you have, what is the girl's name? Melissa Joan Hart on that list. She was Clarissa Explains It All.
I'm not even going to mention the title. The guys you got did for that with her.
She was also my crush.
So Christina Applegate was actually my. I don't want to say it online. But like Christina, it's sad that I know that and I remember it. But Christina Applegate, Kelly Bundy was my first celebrity crush.
Bro, it's hard for me to tell you she's not like my. I mean, that is I get it.
But she's still attractive now
because of Sarah Chalk.
Yeah. So Jessica Biel or Jessica Alba?
Okay, here's the problem. This is where we're going to get into trouble. Because I am only somewhat pop culturally literate, so I'm going to guess that I know the difference between the two. One of them was in Fantastic Four, and one of them was in Boba Fett, right?
No.
Or were they both? Is that the same girl?
No, Jessica Alba was...
Which one got herpes from the kid in NSYNC? That's literally, I don't know anything
All right,
about.
so Jessica Biel was in Blade Trinity, and Jessica Alba was in the Fantastic Four.
Okay, so Alba.
And Jessica Alba
Which one's in Boba Fett? Is that Biel?
I haven't started Boba Fett yet.
Okay, that's Biel. It's 100% Biel. Right. I'm an Alba guy.
Harley Quinn or Elektra?
Oh, Harley Quinn. And here's why. Because I think I could fix her. And I don't say it in a bad way. She's...
Time out. No, I'm not letting that go. You talk about the 7-year relationship and you said you could fix Harley Quinn. I'm not letting that go. I am not letting that go. I'm sorry. Okay.
You know the character's supposed to arc?
Okay, I'm sorry. Go
what a plateau looks like. I can't get the. We're trying to get exit velocity.
Oh God, I'm sorry. Yeah, so you.
But also Elektra scares me a little more than I know Harley Quinn. You know what I mean? I don't know Elektra. Elektra kills you in your sleep. Harley Quinn wakes you up before she kills you, and I know how to defend against that.
I'm actually adding a question. I'll fix this in post, or I won't. Actually, no. So you're gonna go Harley Quinn. How do you fix Harley Quinn? Just out of curiosity.
You don't. She's got to hit rock bottom on her own. Let's be perfectly honest.
Can I tell you how happy I am that
my Harley Quinn got fixed when I left her alone for about 5 years, and she stumbled into the right guy and got her shit together. So I don't know. Yeah, and she's got a kid, and she's doing amazing, and it's weirdly cool. My mom is still friends with her on Facebook, so I weirdly see stuff. But sometimes Harley Quinn just wakes the fuck up, you know?
I'm glad that, like, again, you talk about the character story arcs. She left the Joker and then became this incredible character. And then the Injustice comic book came out, and she became close to perfect. Unfortunately, it's not the same universe, but you get it. Jean Grey or Emma Frost?
Okay, so... God dog it. If only Emma Frost looked like Jean Grey.
Can I tell you that I think Emma Frost is probably horrible in bed?
Yes, but not if she looked like Jean Grey.
Jean Grey looks like she fucks.
Yes, but Jean Grey looks like she's also Jean Grey. There's a lot of... Emma Frost does... I'm weirdly less... These aren't just purely physical questions. If I'm only basing this on a comic book panel with no dialogue, but I don't get that luxury. So these are either ors that I gotta pick and choose and defend. And I feel like if I was gonna have to defend myself against either one of those girls, I would rather it be Emma Frost. You know, how many times are we gonna have to watch Jean Grey ruin a movie? So she's hotter though. That's my point.
It's funny because as I'm writing this, I'm like, the Slade Ham picked the redhead or the blonde.
I'm tricky. It's usually blonde.
That's what I thought. I was like, he's gonna go Emma Frost. But so, the fun thing about this is, I know you're not caught up on X-Men, but do you know about their move to Krakoa and like their whole island nation?
So a little bit. You mentioned the Sabretooth thing earlier, and you give me a quick debriefing, and I'd be all caught up.
Hold on. So there's so I'm gonna get into that. We'll get into the later. So Black Canary or Catwoman?
Woo! Definitely Black Canary.
I kind of saw that coming, but I was
100%.
Like, originally it was Catwoman or Jean Grey, but I was just like, I kind of figured you'd go Catwoman just because Catwoman's not a fucking telepath.
Yeah, no, yeah, 100%. That's I always, like I said, Emma Frost who looks like Jean Grey. I just don't need you to know what I'm thinking, and I also don't need Catwoman to know where I live. So that's a tough call. But yeah. If you're making me pick between those two, Black Canary for sure.
All right, Salma Hayek or Halle Berry?
Ooh, hang on, man. You're gonna have to get a little more. Do I get? It depends on the versus. You know what I mean? If it's Catwoman versus the Bodyguard's Hitman 2 or whatever that is, or if it's or are we gonna? Oh shit! I just unplugged my light. Or are we gonna bring into the?
You know what? I got you. We'll do.
Or do I get Swordfish versus? Give me another Salma Hayek that I.
No, I got you. I got you now. We're gonna do The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard or the sequel, or Halle Berry from John Wick 3.
Oh, damn.
Because I'm not Halle Berry.
Here's the thing. I know exactly how crazy Salma Hayek is in that movie, so I'm just gonna go with anything that's not her in that movie. And you could say Sylvester Stallone in Cobra, and I think I would probably at least have to think about it. Can we revisit?
But at least with Selma Hayek, she's only crazy when you're like cheating or
Or there. Or in the scene. Or present.
But all right, okay, hold on. Let me. Imagine this. Imagine.
What's your next question? Salma Hayek or Jean Grey, but only her telepathy? What's the question?
So okay, so imagine you're Slade 5 years ago, right? Still bar hopping.
Yeah, I know.
Do you still not pick Salma Hayek?
Yes, in a. Again, 5 years ago depends on the night. It depends on who's answered my text messages in line at Whataburger. That's what I mean. There's so many variables in that conversation.
Yeah,
this conversation is happening in a vacuum. I just get to pick.
that's true. This one
It's still not Selma Hayek in that stupid movie.
You know,
I love that movie, but not her.
I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna save this next one for last. Rosario Dawson or Scarlett Johansson?
That's so tough. You showed me both doors. That's not fair. I would have 100% gone, if you'd said Rosario Dawson versus X, I would have taken Rosario Dawson always. Except versus Scarlett Johansson.
Really?
And yes, she is a very special kind of weakness for me. From a number of movies, but as Black Widow, yeah. I'm a child, and she was wearing leather. And
I really have no argument there. So for me, it was Rosario Dawson she was on Conan O'Brien late one night, and she was talking about stealing, talking about bootleg DVDs, and I was in love. I was like, all right, well, you got me. This one's going to be weird, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Lisa Bonet or Zoe Kravitz?
I'm not restricted to time, right?
Nope, it's them in what you consider their prime.
Yeah, this is Lisa Bonet, and this is Lisa Bonet, and I am fully acknowledging that I am wrong when I say that.
Well,
it is Lisa Bonet, and it is, the era. Cosby wasn't in jail, nor did we know. There was a nice little dance in the music and the stuff, and occasionally she came down those stairs, and dear sweet baby Jesus.
Or she just walk into the kitchen with her fucking shoulders and shimmying, and I'm like, oh dear God.
Bro, that Different World era was such a. I can't explain it to you. It was so free. She was so 90s mixed is the only way I know how to put it. Like, it was that perfect, just kind of light-skinned attitude.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it was she was probably the strongest of their kids. The one who kind of just I'm gonna do what the fuck I want. But I'm also going to be the kid you never have to worry about.
That era, man. Era. I would have fallen in love with just about anything that was in that era.
Well, it's funny you say that, because our last of this is Amy Fisher or Alyssa Milano.
Alyssa Milano, bro.
I thought I had you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought I had you with Leia.
You gotta get a sweet spot between. Again, she's another one who was sort of in her and Stacey Keenan, and I'm trying to think of who else was in that era that was a teen TV star, right?
Yeah.
And she was mine. She was just a little bit older than me. I was just little quivery lip.
Oh yeah.
Through Who's the Boss, and then into whatever else she did, and then I remember her later on. Charmed or with a dumb witch show or I don't even know what dumb.
And then she randomly did.
She was always Who's the Boss to me.
And then she randomly was nude and stuff, and then Google came out. And
there was a no. She did Playboy or she did one of the magazines back in the day.
All I know is I seen her titties and I was happy.
Yes, and I was too. But you had to find them. You had to go get a hard copy of them. There was no, hey man, just send me those. There was no fappening. There was no just discovering them or Googling them. It was a full-blown scavenger hunt to get an actual. So
yep.
Yeah, Alyssa Milano for sure.
All right. So lastly, and this one is, I can't wait to hear your reaction. You have to kill Screech.
I did. I'm sorry.
And you need an assassin. What comic book character do you pick as an assassin to kill Screech?
Oh, this is tough. Cancer Man.
I don't know if I need to edit that out or not.
No, don't edit it out. It'd be a superhero named Karma.
So okay.
This drags my inner devils to the shoreline for the fucking beach party.
Oh god.
But I don't mind. Again, it's a. Hang on, let me tell. I'm gonna tell you exactly why. Where is that stupid thing at? Did I put it in a box?
I'm about to say because I've heard three-legged unicorn.
There's a framed dollar bill somewhere.
Oh, the one that he refuses to.
So childish.
Okay. The show's
For context, I'll give you here's the nutshell version of everything up until now, and then I'll answer your question. But many years ago, there's a chapter in my book about this, and I've told it on many other podcasts. But there's a story on my album Redemption that talks about this. We worked together in Shreveport, Louisiana. He was a horrible comic. He had just moved from television to stand-up. He'd been doing stand-up not long at all. And
he still didn't. He didn't do it after.
No, well, yeah, he did for a while, and then he stopped. It's a lot of people moonlight at it. Everybody thinks this is the thing you could just come do, and you cannot. So he comes over. He does Shreveport. I get called in to feature for him. He is dying on stage. He's having a horrible time, and I'm a young comic, but I'm a good comic at the time, and that's the only way I know how to say it. I'm not doing badly in a southern town, and he is doing very, very poorly after me. And by Friday night, they're trying to get me fired, and they go, "Oh, Slade is stealing Dustin's jokes. Here's the joke." And Dustin was a prolific joke thief. He'd stolen from comics. Everybody from Kinnison to names you wouldn't recognize but should, like Keith Alberstadt. That's what he did. He took from people because he didn't understand the sacredness of any of this. So that weekend, their job was to get me fired, and they just thought theft accusation was the way to do it. And the club stood behind me, and they ended up quitting in the middle of shows on Friday night, and they walk out of the room. So this starts a feud that goes on for more than a decade until he died. That was in 2005. He and I would never be in the same place at the same time, but if I knew he was going to be somewhere, I would tell fans to go there. And I would just say, "Hey, just say Slade says hi." And there were so many videos that would get sent of, "Hey, I'm a really big fan," and the hand would go out to get shaken. "By the way, Slade says hi," and then the face going flush, and I would giggle. And and then he would tweet. It would just go back and forth. And there was a club in Colorado where we would, instead of signing the green room wall or the club headshots, they would have you sign like a dollar bill, and then they'd tack it to the wall, and the whole wall was covered in dollars signed by comics. And so I would get there every April, and he would get there every March. And so in April, I would sign $1. "Hey, loonies, love you, good to be here." I'd stick it to the wall. And then he would get there in March, and he would take my $1 off the wall, and he would write, "Die, Slade hack," and then he would stick that to the wall where my $1 used to be. And when I get there 3 weeks later, I would see this childish thing he did, and I would take it down, and I would write, "Dustin Diamond sucks cocks in hell," and I would stick it where that $1 was, and it would stay for 11 months and a week, and then he would take it down for 3 weeks, and then I would replace. This went on for years, and it might have even been playful at a certain point. I was just
thinking that I kind of feel like after a certain time,
except the amount of people who told me that once the camera was off or once they were, "You told that motherfucker," like it was never polite. And I know the night that we worked together, he was an absolute horrid human being. So I just know that when whatever transpired and he's gone, I just took the dollar that said "Die Slade" and I framed it and wrote "Outlast," and that was all it said. Was just like a nice little reminder to myself to just outlast whatever's pushing at your buttons. And then I framed it and I threw it in a box. I don't even know where it's at because I haven't thought about this. I'm trying to let go of my stupid little grudges.
I have one question. I want to know if you can tell the story or not. You're gonna look at me differently. We all have that one song. But
Wolverine, so he cuts his head off cleanly, and it just happens in a second. I don't have to spend that long hanging out with Dustin Diamond.
I kind of figured you'd pick Deadpool just because he would torment him for days. He would torment him for days
so I can move on.
Days on end. Can you? I'm not sure if this was in your book or if this was in your stand-up, but there was a story about the lead singer of Creed. Do you mind telling that story real quick? Because so, and let me just say, in this, I am both ashamed and not ashamed of this. My Sacrifice is a great fucking song.
Look, when My Own Prison came out and that first album came out, I was a Creed fan. I remain to this day. It's funny what you talk about on stage versus what really comes out in real life, because I'm a tremendous Tremonti fan, the guitarist.
Okay.
He went on to play with Alter Bridge and his own band Tremonti, and he's fantastic. Miles Kennedy sang for them for a while. Creed as a band was a really good musical outfit. Scott Stapp was kind of preachy, and it got a little too close to church rock, and just kind of, I checked out after a certain. All right, now you're singing about having babies and the rain falling and I like a little more. I like my metal to be a little more pop, like the potential to cut me. I need some teeth to my metal. This is just you need
metal to be fucking
the
metal.
Blowfish. Ugh. Yeah, which I also liked at one point. But the point is, so I made fun of Creed, and then in 2006 or 6 or 8, we were in Iraq, and we were on tour, and the USO had sent Scott Stapp out solo, or I don't know what the whole context of it was. But when we got to Kuwait, they were all go, I hope you guys are better than that last group of people who just came through. They were all, man, high maintenance and blah. I'm like, we're not. There's no maintenance. We're just comics. We didn't even bring microphones. Like, if they ain't got microphones where we're going, we're just yelling. So nothing to worry about here. All right, because they were like, man, he couldn't. His guitar was left out in the sun, and they started giving us all. Apparently he was complaining about everything there was to complain about, and they sent him home and wouldn't let him go. They were like, if you can't cut it in Kuwait without complaining, then we're not going to let you go to Iraq. Now, I don't know. I wasn't there. I can only tell you what they told me. I don't know if they went to Iraq or not. But I do know that would have been the way they told it. I go, the easiest way to end the war, if you just set up a big speaker system and let him go into the chorus of When Arms Wide Open and just play that on repeat, the terrorists would have killed themselves. That's the war would have been over, would have been home by 2010. None of this would be happening in Russia.
What? I forget. Who's the dude who sings What's New Pussycat?
Tom Jones?
So, Tom...
I could be making that up.
No, I think it is Tom Jones.
Google that.
I'm looking at it now. So, Tom Jones...
Google, who sings What's New Pussycat? Tom Jones, yeah.
Okay, so Tom Jones apparently ended a protest. So people listening, give us a Google. Someone played Tom Jones over a loudspeaker and it ended a protest. It's the funniest fucking thing I've heard in a very long time. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Old Man Wade Show. I want to thank Slade Ham for doing this. I thought it was only going to be an hour. Apparently, we have been doing this for over an hour and 48 minutes. This is fucking awesome. And just to reiterate everything that we talked about, I remember the first time we did a podcast together, and I hated myself for being such a fanboy because I was like, this is fucking Slade Ham. This is like, it's the guy I really admire, and like I remember just being like this giggly kid. And the next time I was like, it was a little bit different, And this time it was in just the evolution of being just a host. This is one of the times where I love interviewing people or just talking to people and letting them talk, because it is literally the easiest thing in the world when you're hosting. You just let a person talk. And I learned, and again, from over 1,000 hours, because if you think about the live podcast and the times guys have gone over an hour, over a half hour, you've done over 1,000 hours of podcasting, and this is still, for me, just so much to learn about you as a person, you as a podcast, you as a comedian, you as a world traveler. And I think you as a world traveler is one of the dopest fucking things ever, because you don't just do the touristy things. You don't stay at resorts. You go and do hikes. You go and do mountains. The running joke that like you'll have like these random pictures of you like staring off into the sunset, and it's like just guy things. But it's like, but people like, and it's funny because people do that and they don't really get it. Now, I say that I have a fantastic story for you that I've told on this podcast, but it's a tribute to my wife. I am very much like, I'm scared to do a lot of things. I don't like heights. I don't like fire. I don't do water. I would be like, I'm the worst. But
Totally fair.
But my wife gets me out of my shell to do a lot of things. So we went to Mexico, and on this particular excursion, we went to Machu Picchu, and then there was this random man. It was not a sinkhole, but it's a cave, and it's just like
a cenote, yeah.
Yeah. So you know it. So there's 2 levels to the dive. So.
Oh, were you at Shelha?
Possibly.
Did y'all go to? So hang on. Did y'all go to Tulum? Is that what? Anyway, there's a stretch in Cozumel. There's a. It doesn't matter. There's 1,000 places to jump off stuff in there.
So we were in Mexico, and we were from Mexico, and it was a 3-hour jaunt. And I've told the story on the show, but I tried not to eat anything because my stomach is weak. I figured bologna sandwich and ginger ale for breakfast should be the easiest thing that's gonna make sure I don't shit. Mm-hmm. I had to shit so bad for 2 hours I was sweating. And it just so happens that the couple next to us saw this and felt sympathetic. And they was like, is there anything we can do? I said, can you stop this bus so I can shit? Otherwise, then no. But, like, we developed this really fun relationship with them. Like, and I hate that we don't have their number after this because it was like... But anyway, so my wife was like, oh, I'm going to go dive off the cliff. You could do it. I go, fuck that. I'm not diving off a cliff. She goes, you have a life jacket. I said, I'm the dumbass who will drown in a life jacket, and everyone will think it's an Onion news article. She goes, well, I'm going to dive. I said, you have fun with that. So I'm like literally climbing, like clinging to the rocks like fucking Spider-Man in the water to go sit with the couple we were hanging out with. And I'm sitting on the rock, I'm chilling, and so they go, oh, your wife's up there. So I wave at her. I turn around to talk. I hear, ah! Smash! Oh! And I go, was that my wife? And they go, yeah. And so I look over at her. And like, so all the air is knocked out of her. So she had it right. She crossed her legs, crossed her arms, but then freaked out.
Oh, man.
So she has all the wind knocked out of her. And I have a death fear of water, of like deep water. And so I'm hanging on the rock as she's swimming. And I'm like, grab my hand. And then so she eventually swims over because she's a strong swimmer. And she looks at me and goes, use my strong hand. She never lets me live that down. She goes, I couldn't swim. I was like, we would have drowned that day. But again, like the idea of like the fact that like you don't do the thing you would go on that you would rent a truck or rent a car and you would do that excursion on your own.
Well, yeah. So this comes back to what we talked about at the very beginning of all of this, and the why I travel in the first place, and the why I do any of this in the first place, and it's because I know what it's like to be stuck in my little limited worldview. It's like remembering the room you grew up in or something, where you just go, oh, I can't not know that little, I can't unknow that tiny space I used to live in when the whole universe was just Southeast Texas. So now, every time I get out into something, and this is from Ethiopia and being down in the forest outside of Arba Minch, or being in Japan and the islands of, off the coast, Miyagi and so it's like regardless of where you go in the world, there's these totally separate ways of viewing shit, right? That's so different from going to Nampa, Idaho, or something where everybody's got a bunker or whatever. I don't know how those people live, but all these dumb little worldviews that everybody thinks are right. I just like to go experience them. I like to go stand there next to you and just go, oh, what does this thing we're all looking at look like from here?
Yeah.
And that, to me, requires me to jump off of a lot of uncomfortable things, to walk through a lot of uncomfortable grounds, to go into places where I might not be that safe, but I'm also, the curiosity in me wants to know what's on the other side of the door. And if you let those two tussle, I'm going to go through the door. Because I found nothing but reward in exploring that. That's all these different ways of seeing stuff. So when something happens on the news, or we're at war in the Ukraine, or we're in war in the Middle East, or wherever else, I'm able to sit back and go, you know what? I can feel this from either side. Yeah. I know what these people over here are defending and why they're angry, and I know certainly as an American or from this vantage point what we're doing. And when you can kind of feel all of that, you don't feel as quick to run over to one side or the other, and you're able to stand back a little bit. And for me, as a guy who makes his living commenting on and just being the dude who shines the flashlight, it's way better for me to be a spectator than it is for me to be a participant in the fight. So the more of these places I can go and get a basic understanding of, okay, well, wow, that's another way to see the world. If I can shove all those in my arsenal, then I'm free to talk about it, and I'm free to lead conversations between people who maybe don't know how to talk to one another, because I've been to some places where they talk differently. And that's what keeps me moving, is just like, oh, wow, there's different ways to do this. Like Bill Hicks would have said, this fucking ride? Are you serious? This is one way. I picked one. It took me to stand up, and I've spent most of it using Texas as a hub to go experience other ways of seeing the world. I don't know that stand-up's what I'm going to do forever. I think it is, but I don't know. I can't speak for future me. You just get this me, same way you got me 2 or 3 years ago, and when we do this again, you can get another version of me who probably thought this me was absolutely out of his mind. So
yeah. So before we go, tell everyone where they can find you. Tell them about, so just because I actually have it up here now, go to YouTube, type in the Whiskey Brothers into the search engine. It'll be, you can hit the subscribe button, and right next to it, you can tell us them. It's a picture of 4 shot glasses that are laying down. So it's red, and I think the shot
which
glass,
somebody just said looks like the logo for the the League of Shadows, maybe. It looks like a DC logo. Google the League of Shadows logo and tell me if we're close. They just posted this on our Facebook page the other day. It might not be, but there's a snowflake-esque looking geometric design that matches our logo just a little bit. Nevertheless, I'm easy to find. I'm at Slade Ham, SLADEHAM, on everything. So you can go find me. I've got some really cool stuff on my own YouTube page, but really the Whiskey Brothers is my passion project for 11 years, and it's just always been the sidecar to my motorcycle, and I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing. My focus is on my book and my stand-up and the special I'm putting out this year, but mainly I'm trying to do the Andy Huggins thing, and I'm enjoying producing some stuff and staying behind the microphone of the podcast, so just go follow that stuff, and I'll be happy.
Also, you guys have Is This Thing On?
Mm-hmm. Another project. I'm trying to showcase some local Houston talent, and the easiest way for me is to give them a show with some written prompts, and we treat it like the writer's room, and then we sort of improv with one another, but with written punchline. It's very similar to Whose Line Is It Anyway if stand-ups did it instead of actors, because they're as prompted ahead of time as we are. It's all still improvisational, but everyone has a idea of the direction we're going, and these guys just happen to work in joke form, so it works at a table with microphones. I'm surrounded by people who are funnier than I am, and I just get to host a bunch of shows, and I'm good at that part. So I get my punches.
But I also that should also be acknowledged, because some people will take that as intimidation, or they may take it as jealousy, as opposed to someone who understands how things work. And it's just like, and you know what's funny? They may say you're funnier than them, but you don't take that as a situation where it's like, well, they're better than me, they're funnier than me, so I shouldn't promote them. You're like, no, like, I'm going to continue to do that.
Here's why I say that too, though, and it's not it sounds humble, but it's also not. I know if I was in their position, I would be the funny guy, and they would be the pilot. Like, there are roles on a spaceship, I guess, for all intents and purposes. You know what I mean? So if I'm flying it, I don't have the mental bandwidth to also be the funniest guy on the podcast.
You're Captain Picard.
I get a lot of punches in. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a sleeper, but it's these guys are the gunners, and I'm a bit more of the pilot.
Dude, you're Captain Picard.
Yes, who does not press the button to fire.
But like,
he gives the order.
Yeah, it's like you're Captain Picard, and like sometimes, like, and I feel like Rob Mungle was Worf.
Jameson, Earl Grey, hot. So we're clear. But
like, it's just funny because like there's been so many renditions of Star Trek, even though you're a Star Wars guy. But like, there's been so many.
I will talk Next Generation with you till you're blue in the face.
I need to start that.
If you haven't watched it, it's one of the most Star Trek will always be. And I used to. Again, I'll sidebar for 2 seconds. I'll give you your show back. But it's a.
Oh no! You're the guest, so you
when
do.
When it comes to Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry's ability to give you challenging moral issues. It wasn't just about. Everybody focuses on Star Trek because it was like the really liberal, open-minded, safe space for everything. It dealt with these issues before. Oh, welcome Star Trek is from the very beginning. Captain Picard is banging green women. It was speaking to social issues from day one. But it's at its best when it challenges you to real moral dilemmas. And I watched. Even if you go to, I didn't think, if you ask me in retrospect, Next Generation was the best one. Deep Space Nine got a little dark. It was amazing. But by the time they got to Voyager, they were so far off the mark. It was just a parody of itself. But the truth is, even Voyager with 7 of 9 and a bunch of stuff, they've always dealt with these heavy moral issues. In Next Generation, the episode where they're talking, and how they ended up with this show Picard that's on now, the moral dilemma of whether or not Data was human. I think the episode was called A Measure of a Man. I should know all this. That's wild, deep nerd shit. But they would go into, by the end of the episode, someone would have made a decision. 7 of 9 had to do it with these Borg that they had found on this planet, and she had to figure out whether or not she was going to send them back to the collective where they'd never be free to live out for however long, or remove the stuff and they were just going to die in a month, but they'd have a month to live. And it's the old, the railroad switch dilemma. Which way are you going to send the car, to kill the 2 kids or the 1 old person, or whatever the math is.
Yeah.
But when you get into those kinds of things, you don't leave with conclusion. Even they made a decision that you probably wouldn't agree with. And that was always what was so cool. Not probably, but might not agree with. They probably made what they thought, according to their character, was the right moral decision. But that wasn't the same in Next Generation. Riker and Picard didn't make the same decisions. Data, with no emotional attachment at all, certainly made different decisions. So as you just get into all that nuance, it was really interesting to have whatever your beliefs were challenged a little bit without them ever being in jeopardy. You just got to see like the best version of what if, which is the thought experiment we never do with ourselves, right? I love going down roads of what if I believed this way. Like it's people don't do that at all.
I do it too much.
Do what?
I do it too much. Like the idea of I've always been fascinated by the butterfly effect. I heard about the butterfly effect fairly young, and it always intrigued me about what would have happened if you go left instead of going right, or what if I would have picked up. Like everyone looks at me and assumed I played football. I go, no, I was a fucking skinny jack kid. I played basketball all my fucking life. But it's like what if I would have played football? What if I would have? What if I would have?
It's an old joke in a set, but I used to go. I don't have any kids now, but I think about the girl I was madly in love with in high school. Right? What would have happened if she had known I existed? Like how? And then that's the.
But yeah,
that's the turn to the joke. But
yes,
it's the exact thing. You do play that what if game because I think about her. She did not know I existed, but she's got like 6 kids or something now, and you go, oh God, I would have been working at the plant in Southeast Texas raising 6 kids and feeding those mouths, and I'd have just only known her, and
so here's the funny thing. So I always think that. So I was at a job that I detested for 15 years. I made a lot of really good relationships, whether it be working at a bar. I bounced at a bar for a year. I met a few like local and like super celebrities, if you want to call them that or whatever. So it was cool for a while, and it's the connections that I had at my job is how I met my wife. Now, what happens if I decided to not work at that job? What happens if I decided to do this? And then the idea of what happens is because like people ask me my religious standpoint, I go, I'm agnostic as fuck. I don't know what the fuck is going on. But I always think, but there are certain things that I think may be destiny. I always think that it's destiny for me to meet my wife. So, like the Deadpool quote, her crazy matches my crazy. Like it works out fucking perfectly. Like I hit rock fucking bottom. She picked my ass back up. When she's struggling, I'm struggling. It just worked out that way. So I wonder, hey, what if some way, shape, or form in every fucking reality we meet each other, but it's a different me? Like, what if it's me who doesn't have this ridiculous Bruce Willis haircut thing going on, and like, you know what I mean? And I got locks like fucking Sam, and she's emo punk singing with fucking Britney Spears, and you know what I mean. So it's kind of, these are the kind of one of the things I think in my head. Like, what if I would have started the job that I'm at now earlier? Like, you know what I mean, a job that I love.
But here's the thing about that is that each one of those comes from the root of you. Yeah. So you can only get. Here's what we do. What we do as people alive. What I do as a person. I always try to generalize this because it makes me feel better about myself. I have no idea if any of this is generalized at all. But what I try to do is not start at the root of me with every time I try to experiment mentally or hypothetically with a belief system. Like, what if? Because us, me, tend to work in terms of, this is why you hear often, people, I can't believe someone would think like that. Because we operate in a gradient. Everything, to get from here to here, it's connectivity. Our minds stitch scenes together all the time. The input coming in terms of photons being received, is utter chaos. You have mechanisms and spigots in place to valves that turn all that down and make sure that what gets in is manageable, and then it stitches it together in a way that you can process it and make a decision.
Yeah.
And that's because it's the same way if you go jogging and you're holding your cell phone up while you jog, the footage that you get from that cell phone is going to be nonsensically bouncy.
Yes.
Your brain does all the compensation for the bouncing and the movement, and it basically works like a gimbal to offset and to take care of the error. It does error correction on what it's receiving so that what you get isn't some jumbled mess. And that's sort of the way I try to process everything. I go, okay, I'm going to discard a bunch of information. I know I have to do that to get from point A to point B, so it's an even stitch. So if I'm going to explore something way over here, I can't start here. I'm never. They don't connect. You play video games. You know what it's like when you go into a dungeon on an old game, and your torch only goes so far, and the map hasn't been revealed.
Yeah.
And it's even on games now. It's not until you explore parts of that map and get outside of what you can see originally that you go, oh, I see how to get from here to here. But to get from here to here, I got to go here, 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 and here. And the travel and all this other stuff that I try to put myself in the place of mentally, when I sit there and do these dumb thought experiments, where I go, what would the world look like if? I really do try to come at them from a place of all the things I believe now don't come with me. I'm really trying to get there with whatever I believe spiritually, whatever I believe that we are communally, or whatever my beliefs are about family or friendship or nation or flag, all that stuff that just is my inherent foundation. It's really, really difficult, but also really awesome to set it to the side and go, what would I think if this was my background? How would I view this problem if this is where I saw the world? And the only way I know how to tell you to get those different vantage points is to go to those different vantage points and sit there with the people who see the world that way and talk about how they see the world and try to get a bit of a foundation for what their beliefs are built on. And then you scrawl that in a notebook and you go on with your life, and eventually you read back through them. But those are the places I try to go when I'm going, what if?
Yeah.
Because everything that starts with me is just, it's more fucking me, man.
You know, it's funny, you bring that up, and here comes that thing again. Me and my wife, we talk about that. Like, what if our lives were different? She grew up really fucked up, and she's talked about, like, the things that made her this hardened person who can easily drop somebody because she knows what it's like when you give somebody your heart. And I'm not even talking about romantically, but like when you give somebody your heart as a friend or a relative and they fuck you over, and she's like, I can drop somebody easily because that's where she's come from. For me, it's a little different. I dwell on stuff. And so we've had the conversations on what happens if our lives were reversed. I always say she would be the president of the United States. I'd be dead or in jail. But then she'll always combat that and go, how do you know that? She goes, your life may have been more comfortable, and now because of that, she doesn't have the same kind of tolerance or attitude towards life that she has.
But how long do y'all carry those beliefs? How long do those identities come with you? So at what point do y'all become something different than what you were when you met?
So that's the funny thing about it. Like with our relationship, we have literally grown with each other. We've been together for going on 15 years come August. We've been married going on 7. So we've gone through, we're definitely not the same people we were. Like her niece lived with us. Like the room you see now, which I'm now calling Krakoa, it was her niece's was her niece's old room. And without bad mouthing her, my wife kicked her out. Now, the year and 3/4 that she was living with us, me and my wife's relationship was okay, as opposed to before, it was great. And now a lot of it had to do with me not speaking up more because of the things that were going on. And we took some hits as a relationship, but once she was gone, our relationship was back at a 10 again. And so we sat and we always have these really deep conversations about everything. It can be race, religion, Black Lives Matter. She's a mixed woman. Like her mom is, her words, ladies and gentlemen. She goes, her dad is Cape Verdean, who literally came here from Cape Verde, and got his green card, came here and all that. And her mother is white trash. That's how she describes it. And she always talks about her growing up. She wasn't white enough for the white people and black enough for black people. So we have these really deep conversations about that, about religion, and we really sit and we talk. And I think one of the reasons that our relationship remains as strong as it is because as we grow as people, we grow as a relationship. For example, today I posted on Facebook something funny. She wanted to go buy a gift for some friends who were just having their first child, and because of my back surgery, I can't really walk around like that. So I sat in the car, I kept the auxiliary going, and I passed the fuck out. I woke up an hour later. I'm like, where the fuck is my wife at? And so I made a joke on Facebook, and I tagged her. I'm like, it's been 5 years since I saw my wife. I've been living on nothing but stuff in the cup holder and in the glove compartment.
Oh, you Oregon Trailed her.
So, yes. 4 people will get that joke, but it's still great.
Don't matter. They're all 50 plus, and those people got money.
Yeah, you're right. But she gets the joke, and she laughed. And so when she saw the joke, she said, fuck that. I wish I would have went to the other store after I would have saw that. But her sense of humor is fucking great. And we understand each other. So when, you'll appreciate this more than most. Deadpool was just coming out as a movie. I have a Deadpool tattoo that I've had since 2004.
Oh, shit. Hang on. You want to see something cool? Hang on a second.
Always.
Hang on. Page 6. Anyway, it's the original art. It's hard to see.
That's fucking great. But that's fucking dope. So
I have,
okay, here's a couple of stories. So one, my wife doesn't understand my love for Rosario Dawson. But during Rhode Island Comic Con, she paid $75 for me to get a picture with her. But she ended up not going. She had some political stuff to do, and my wife. So she was pissed. She's like, "Fuck Rosario Dawson." I'm like, "She's doing stuff for to help you." She goes, "I know, but still, fuck her."
She came in second in my poll anyway. So
no, never mind. I'm not even gonna make the joke. So her friend was her former friend was getting married the weekend Deadpool was coming out. And I said to her, I'm going to see Deadpool come hella high water. And she was just like, I'll make it happen. And she goes, I will make sure you see that the day it comes out. Sure enough, we're in fucking Las Vegas. I have no idea where the fuck these movie theaters were. We walked from wherever the fuck we were to the strip, from the strip to the movie theater to go see this fucking Deadpool movie. And but again, it's the evolution and the love that she has for certain things. Now, there are some things that I just don't get that she does, but I'll give it a shot. Who gives a shit? She calls me a 14-year-old girl because I love Taylor Swift music.
What'd you do?
I love Taylor Swift music. I listen to fucking emo music. That's just what I do. So, but I like Alanis Morissette, and so she laughs at this shit, but she understands it and she accepts
it.
It.
Anybody who gives you shit for listening to Alanis Morissette while you're by yourself, that's not your person. You push her down some stairs and y'all have a real conversation in the morning.
Oh, no. Trust and believe. She tells me. So, one day she was just like, have you ever heard, because she loves Alanis Morissette. She went to go see her in concert, I think a few months ago, maybe a couple months ago.
Alanis is remarkable.
And the Reason I Drink, that song speaks to me in a certain fucking way. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, this woman is phenomenal. So, but she laughs at me. Oh, what the fuck is it? Avril Lavigne. She has this one really stupid song that I love. And she goes, oh my God, you're a fortune.
Is it Skater Boy?
No, it's Why Should I Care? It's called Why Should I Care? And she goes, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, I like this song. What do you want from her? She goes, you're a 14-year-old girl. And so, but again, it's these kind of jokes. It kind of makes me who I am. And it makes our relationship work. My best friend Lavelle, who, funnily enough, big black dude with long locks. And
hey, we got a type.
And so we joke about these random things, and they're conversations that me and him can have that I can't have with other people because we grew as people. I don't use the F word for the homosexual community because it's wrong. I wouldn't want someone who doesn't look like me to drop the N-bomb, so why should I do the same thing? And so, again, evolution as people. And then but we still make fucked up jokes, but
yes,
but they're within. But we also are very sensitive to the people, even when they're not around us. But it's life. It's
But
fucking life.
you have to, everything of this is the whole theme of the episode. Everything evolves. We evolve, society evolves, language evolves, all of it evolves. We always act like these things we're tying people up for right now and kicking them out of things for, like they weren't. Social acceptability is a sliding scale. It moves. It's a window. And I know this is a comic. I mean, my job is to shoot at things that aren't inside the safe window. The window is us. That's what we've socially agreed on. Inside of this, you cannot touch this. But this moves like that yodeler on The Price is Right. It's just going up a slope, and there's a window, and it travels with it. And we're allowed the whole time to make fun of what's on the edges, right? Mm-hmm. You can make fun of the really weak and the really powerful, and that's it. That's you can go back to the beginning of society, and we have always culturally agreed that anybody too weak or too powerful was safe fodder. And by weak, I don't mean let's punch homeless people. I just mean people too weak to defend themselves. If you took a social group that had some proclivity, and it could be sexual, it could be whatever. But think of a very niche social group, right? People, witches or something. Yeah. Like, how many witches are there in real America? And I don't mean people who practice Wicca. I mean pointy hats and they
cauldrons and the whole 9 yards.
Stuff, right? Yeah. See how quickly we laugh at the fringe? Where we just go, if there's really somebody with a black cat and a big pot full of weird gumbo that's got animal parts in it, and you're wearing a hat and you think the stuff in that cauldron does something, that's nonsense to almost everybody listening. But probably not to the person who's operating on that level, right? Yeah. Yet societally, we're like, oh, it's totally okay to kind of poke fun at. That's crazy talk, what they're doing over there with their cauldron and their hat. And we do it with the powerful people too. It's presidents and politicians and celebrities. That's all fair fodder. It's just us and whatever this little window that we've decided is important. And the problem is, for so long, as a society, people of color and people of different sexual race, they fell outside of that window. We're now in a place where that window covers, mercifully, almost all of us. We're getting there.
You know what's funny is because there's two different comedians on two different levels. You got Patton Oswalt, who has a joke about not understanding or respecting someone's opinion. He goes, I read Green Lantern comic books. I'm not saying I deserve to have a Green Lantern ring. But on the other side of the spectrum, you have the Chris Rock bit where he goes, if you're fat, you can make fun of someone skinny. If you're poor, you can make fun of someone rich. So it's funny that there are two ends of the spectrum, and two different comedians, like they don't look the same. Their comedy isn't the same. They're not even on the same level, or even in the same groups. Like Patton Oswalt is a god to most nerds. Now Chris Rock is on a lot of Mount Rushmores of comedians. So, but it's also funny that you have like these. It's almost the same, but it's also very different. So this is why
we all agree that everyone agrees that you don't want to punch down.
Yeah.
It's no one. It's not fun to hit an unmoving target. That's why most of us are shooting. That's why Kathy Griffin has a career. It's just her shooting a shotgun at more famous doves than her. That's the
yeah.
It's how I have friends of mine who I adore. Jenny Johnson has a career for sniping at Chris Brown. Now, it doesn't hurt that she's funny and pretty and a bunch of other things.
Jenny Johnson is fucking... Again, someone else I found via your show. Oh, God.
She's incredible, but she's also... She found a cool way in. And it doesn't come from punching down. She wouldn't be Jenny if she was online yelling at poor people with self-esteem issues. Yeah. She's there because she took down someone bigger, and everyone goes, "Yay!"
You said it's Jenny Johnson. I was like, "Fuck, Diane Gallagher."
Another one who's an amazing. She's actually gonna do. It's funny you say that. She texted me today, and she wants to come on and do a Whiskey Brothers episode. So whether she does episode 1000 or something soon. she's gonna take Sam's seat on one of his next absences.
She was one of my favorites too. Like she was.
Right.
But again, like you have to be a certain level of person who can come on and do this show. Abby Volman. She's fucking. Her like diaper rash shit. Can you have her come on my show, please?
100% she'll do your show. You want me to put her on your show?
Yes, I want to do every.
Okay,
I would actually love to have all of y'all on the show. I want to really have deep conversations with Trey. I want to really talk to him, just like, and not even like, I don't want to talk to him like and go, I'm a 39-year-old black man and you shouldn't say this. I want to talk to him and go, what's it like being black under 30? Like, I really want to have these conversations with him because like Trey really fucking intrigues me because I always feel that like this like he's a walnut. You know what I mean? Like he's just he's just sitting there, and I really do feel like that. Like you said,
here's what I know about Trey, and I want to be very delicate with this because I don't want to speak for him. But from the outside, Trey appears to be, and again, like a lot of the stuff we've been talking about, the quickness with which we usually embrace these identities, right?
Yeah.
I am this. The fact that I talked about the journaling earlier because it gives context to how long I've been carrying certain luggage with me.
Yeah.
Where there's zero reason why I, right now, me talking to you, should have any business suffering from repercussions from things 18-year-old me did.
Oh my God. And I've heard the stories, and I know there's more to it that he's not even explaining.
Right, but I say that to say he doesn't hang on to those things. He's like constantly talking to someone on psychedelics, and that he's emotionally detached from in a cool way. Maybe he's got a lot to process and I don't know about, but in a lot of terms, he's just not gonna be beholden to other people's concepts of what racial identity is.
And I love and
those are
respect
the
shit
things
out
that
of
are
it.
fun to watch him explore, and to watch you or anyone else have a conversation with him would be fascinating because I think the way he sees the world is incredible.
And it's funny, like talking about like people around his age, like we always talk about how like people around my age, we talk about how much of a gift and a curse it is, but it's like I listen to Trey and I admire his, like you said earlier, his freeness. And I watch him be a student of comedy and then watch him be a student of podcasting. Because there are certain episodes where he doesn't speak much at all. But It's not out of the fact that he doesn't have much to say. He just knows, I listen to it and he goes, it's just not my place to talk. And then he picks his spot and he's like a fucking sniper. And
if you listen to the show at all, he is as self-aware of a human being as they come.
He is
That's what everyone. I think that's the allure. To answer your earlier question, if I didn't, but the difference between why you saw an abrupt change when Rob left versus what we turned into instantly afterward, it was just different people in the band, and Trey. Everybody happened to play the authenticity guitar well. So we suddenly
oh my God! You should
that
copyright that, and that should be a Whiskey Brother phrase. I'm not even. All jokes aside, like I would write this down: Whiskey Brothers, the authenticity guitar, because that's really what you guys are. It's like it's really just the authenticity guitar, because no one really comes on there and is anything that they're not the person that they're not. Like, you know what I mean? And
you can't sit in this fourth seat with me. Sam's gone a lot, but. You can't sit at the table with me, Trey, and Jerry and bullshit for long without someone saying something. And it's usually I'm the last one who has to. It's just it's a fun dance, and it happens twice a week. And if you get in with us, I think it's inarguably enjoyable. We're really, really, really good at what we do.
Yeah, it's again, it's amazing. Like the show has continued to get better. I will listen. You guys continue to get my money every Patreon at the beginning of the month.
Any more of these sons of bitches leave, it's all over.
But you know what's funny about it is, it's like I can't wait for like a decade from now, and then seeing someone like Trey Tutson, and then going, like, I remember interviewing Slade Ham and him saying that like he's going to be the best of us, and And like you said,
You will.
It's a student thing. He's just
20. I've been doing this for 22 years, Mark. There's a like we spoke about. You know what an arc does, and you know when it's on the right trajectory, and you know when it's going to burn up on re-entry, and you just can see that because after 22 years, I've been standing back for. I've seen them all. I've seen every arc. I've seen people leave this atmosphere from every vector you can imagine, and I can tell you when it's going to work. That kid is magic. So enough about that. You can see him on Mondays.
Whiskey Brothers.
Somebody's going to clip these out. It's going to sound like I like everybody way more than I do.
So you can listen to the Whiskey Brothers every Tuesday and Fridays on everywhere available on podcasts. You can find them on Twitch on Mondays. I want to say 7 o'clock Texas time.
So we're pushing, I think we're going to move everything over to YouTube Live starting after episode 1000. So that's really of all the places to find us. If you just go to the YouTube, you're guaranteed to miss nothing.
That's also, there's also the Patreon. You go to Patreon, go to the Whiskey Brothers, you can find the perks that go on with that. Slade Ham is not really active on Twitter, but when he does post something on Twitter, it's usually fucking hysterical because it's like the Jay-Z phrase: "Get in, get out, and get something."
It's Twitter, dude. I'm socially dark. I don't do Facebook. I don't do Instagram. I'm on them all. Like if you want to go send a request or something, I can sit in languish in purgatory. But my soul is better because of it, and I occasionally will send out like an outbound only. The Whiskey Brothers has a TikTok now, so occasionally I just posted a clip. Yeah. There's a stand-up clip of me on the TikTok that you can't find anywhere else. But I'm personally just find me in person.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was like, God, I wish I lived. I wish I lived closer because I would love to hang and have these conversations more often. So make sure you listen to the Whiskey Brothers podcast. I've actually noticed that Is This Thing On is actually coming in with the when you
I've added it to the audio feed now, so if you follow the Whiskey Brothers on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or iHeartMedia, any of those places, you're going to get Is This Thing On. Those episodes generally release late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, so it's a good way to wake up on Wednesday. I'm showcasing 3 really talented. We're in the best of it's the Is This Thing On All-Stars this season, so we grabbed 15 of the best contestants from the previous season. They're all super hot local Houston comics, Abby Volman being one of them. And if you get a chance, this last episode that had Kenji Alonso, MC Lotto, and Micah Green on it, they resurrected dead comedians, and Paul Mooney, Richard Pryor, and Robin Williams. And it's about 7 minutes long. If you go to the middle of that episode, it's one of the most exceptional 7 minutes of comedy I've ever hosted. So it's a good taste.
Somebody on Tuesday, Aguilar. I can never remember his first name.
Antonio Aguilar, who is a regular on the podcast.
He's been on a few times.
He's a standout. These are just, I'm not kidding you. If you want to go see 15 of the best Houston comics right now, check into what we're doing on Is This Thing On. It'll tell you it'll give you a really good picture of what we're doing in the South comedically.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, Texas has been and I wasn't joking when I say Texas has been gunslinging for comedians. Do yourself a favor, Google Texas comedians, and you'll go, oh, they're not really from place X, they're actually from Texas. And there are certain places in America, I'm going to say because I don't know about the world, but there are certain places in America that if you can survive as a comedian there, you can survive anywhere. And definitely if, I always feel that I've heard stories from I have a friend, Sean Bedgood, who talks about Texas, about being a place where if you're not a good comedian and you don't really have the chops, you will not survive there.
The city breeds beasts. It breeds beasts, and it's I think you'll see that if you go poke your head around the YouTube channel. There's just between the Whiskey Brothers and the shows that we're bringing these local comics on, and some of this other content we're making. It's like cutting into a Whiskey Brothers cake and looking at the layers, and I'll defend it, icing to crust.
I'm going to end it at that. Thank you for listening. This has been the Old Man Wade Show. Until next time, be excellent to each other. Peace.
Damn it, Wade!